It is Monday, January 27th. The time is 6:40 p.m. and I will call this meeting of the Burlington City Council to order. The first item on our agenda is our agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Litwin. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. The second item on our agenda is a work session regarding a legislative update. Mayor, I know that we have David Mickenberg here, but could I turn the floor to you perhaps to introduce this work session?
Yes, absolutely. Dave, why don't you come on up to the table? I appreciate folks being interested and still engaged in our legislative process because the Vermont legislature began about 3 weeks ago. And just in terms of queuing this up, David Mickenberg is one of a team of lobbyists, and he'll introduce who the team is so folks know and how they're dividing up the work to advance our legislative agenda. And I also want to just mention that we have started a regular schedule of meeting with the Burlington delegation down at the State House. The first in-person meeting at the State House will be on Thursday. That is something where we are also collaborating with our school department, who has a lobbyist, as well as our Burlington Electric Department, who has another small contract, just so we're coordinating our very busy legislators' schedules in a concise and organized fashion. Before David offers more of an update in general, I just also want to note that we had a very productive meeting with the State Treasurer, Mike Pichek, about 2 weeks ago or so. That will be relevant when David gets to our infrastructure. As you all will recall, we have 5 core items on our legislative agenda collectively that was unanimously supported back in November, December. And that meeting with the Treasurer was to really start to do due diligence of what other funding and financing resources are available within the state that we can help to draw down our obligation for what we're trying to advance with infrastructure needs here in the city. And the final thing I'll say before passing it over to David is that the other piece that is actually on tonight's agenda to be advanced forward around our charter changes for town meeting day, if you choose to put this on the agenda, as we choose to put this on the ballot in the final passage tonight, is related to our gun charter change item. I also just want to report, I held some, anticipating that hopefully you'll be supportive of this, we get through the final processes of putting on the ballot. I've had some proactive meetings with the Speaker of the House and the Senate Pro Tem, as well as the committee chair of one of the Government Operations Committee, just to start planting the seeds that this charter change is coming. And more importantly, some of our Burlington delegation has actually taken this a step further. I'll mention this more on that item, but I believe it's Bill H-45. Our Burlington delegation has advanced similar policy for a statewide approach to this particular issue of banning firearms in places that serve alcohol. So we've been diligently at work, and I'm going to pass it over to our great team who's been really doing thoughtful and responsive work for us so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Mulvaney-Stanek, Council President Travers, and the Council. My name is David Mickenberg. It's quite an honor to be representing you all in Montpelier. I grew up in Burlington, raising my 2 daughters in Burlington, and I'm really happy to be working on all these important issues on behalf of the city. So the colleagues that I'm working with is at my firm called Mickenberg LLC, and my colleague Christina McLaughlin, and then we partner with another firm, Zatz and Renfrew Consulting, Virginia Renfrew, and Gail Zatz, and collectively we've been working on these issues for about 50 years in Montpelier. So looking forward to this working session, and I'll just give you some brief maybe highlights, and we can go issue by issue if you want to interrupt any time. I'm happy to answer questions. Just very, very high level, the session has just gotten started. It's been about 2.5 weeks, so there's a lot of preliminary conversations in committees, getting to know each other. As many of you know, there was quite a shift in the legislature, and sort of partisan balance, I would say, is more so now than in previous years. And so all the issues we work on, we see through whatever the makeup of the legislature is, and through that lens. But many of the issues that you care about, that you've identified as your priorities, are issues that are now currently being talked about in the legislature. And maybe I'll start with the housing issue. One of the priorities that you all have identified around housing is both the continued growth of permanent affordable housing, as well as specifically around GA housing. And so there will be this week the beginning discussion around the GA task force, the General Assistance Housing Task Force that came up with recommendations. That'll be discussed in committee. And last week, there was conversation in the House Human Services Committee to recommend that in the Budget Adjustment Act, which is happening right now, being discussed in the appropriation committees, that there be additional funds allocated to cover people from April to June. That hasn't been decided yet, but that was the recommendation coming out of that committee. So more to come on general assistance housing issues. There'll be much more conversation this session about that, but this was right off the bat a topic of important conversations around the Budget Adjustment Act. More broadly around permanent affordable housing, there was also recommendations coming out of the House General and Housing Committee for additional funds to be spent in the Budget Adjustment Act for VHCB, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, VHFA, and a recommendation for money to be spent on disability housing through CHT. So all of those things will be discussed. The conversation started today in the House Appropriations Committee, and all of those issues will be discussed throughout this week so we can have more information and updates. But there is generally a sense that obviously we need to continue on the path of creating more affordable housing and more temporary options, at least in the House side in these discussions. I'll note that tomorrow, I believe it's tomorrow, the governor will be unveiling his housing proposal, and we'll see and provide information to you all about what that looks like. In addition, the governor will be presenting his budget to the legislature tomorrow, so we'll know more about all the areas that we've been discussing as the governor brings forth his FY26 budget. So maybe I can pause on housing. I don't know if there's any questions people have.
Thanks, David. I suppose, Mayor, what would you prefer, that we pause and ask?
Actually, David, why don't you go through the
Go
5
through?
top things,
Okay.
and then we can see what questions there
Okay,
are. And,
sounds great.
They do have public comment around 7, so.
Okay.
Okay.
And I will also note, David, that thank you very much to you and your team for the written report that you provided us, which is posted on our agenda for the council as well as for the public. So, so we do have quite a bit here, but appreciate the overview of the 5 topics, and then hopefully we'll turn to the council for any questions or feedback.
Great.
Thanks.
And I will be.
I will also just, sorry, David, this isn't with respect to you. I'm noticing something perhaps off with our microphone system here. It's sounding like very close to like some feedback. I don't know. It sounds much louder than normal. Is anyone else noticing that? No? Okay. It sounds a little different to me. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Sorry to pause, David. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's more me hearing myself. I feel like I'm louder than normal. But David, you go ahead.
Okay. One issue around mental health and substance abuse funding and supports. There has been a recommendation that in the Budget Adjustment Act, there be an additional $10 million allocated for for more support for residential treatment facilities and other providers. As we know, this has been a struggle across our state, but at least in this sort of preliminary budget process through the Budget Adjustment Act, that was a recommendation that we found encouraging. We will continue to monitor that and also see whatever funds are supplemented in the FY26 budget. Just a quick note, a related note around substance use. There was an update to the House Human Services Committee around overdose prevention centers that Dr. Levine and the Deputy Chief of Staff McGee presented, and that was just sort of an update on what's happened from the Department of Health perspective and what the city has currently been working on related to the bill that passed last year. So.
It's 7 o'clock, are we going to speak?
It's not 7 o'clock yet, Jane. No, it's 6:50. So we'll continue with the report. But thank you, Jane. We'll turn to public forum at 7 p.m.
On the issues around the judiciary and pre-monitoring systems, the big issue, one of the big issues that will likely surface is a question and conversation around raise the age, the age in which juveniles would be considered adults for the purposes of criminal proceedings, as opposed to doing it through a different process through the Department of Children and Families. And there's been some disagreement between the administration, just discussion between the administration about what the appropriate age is. So that's one that we'll continue to follow and will be something which the legislature will be looking at this session, likely. On water infrastructure, not a lot to report other than the committees were getting general updates about the current state of water, both the Environment Committee in the House and the Natural Resource Committee in the Senate. The variety of topics related to water quality, what resources are available, things like that. We'll know more in terms of what potential resources are available for infrastructure when the capital bill is revealed. It is our annual bill in the legislature that provides money and resources for capital projects around the state. Generally, that runs around $100 million for 2 years. And we will see we'll see tomorrow what that capital bill looks like and see whether there are thoughts of or conversations around supporting infrastructure, particularly around water. So that's something to note, and we'll have more information on in the coming days. And then the charter change around police oversight, just to note, that has been introduced in H59. So that bill, it's now a bill that will be sent to the government, or it has been sent to the Government Operations Committee where they would consider it. And so that is one of the charter changes that so far has been introduced. We anticipate there to be others. And then finally on gun reform, we've seen a variety, and I noted in the report, a variety of bills that have already been introduced around gun policy. And as the mayor mentioned, H45 sort of models itself on the charter change language that Burlington has passed, and it would require institutions that serve alcohol, bars and restaurants that serve alcohol, to post a sign saying that guns are not allowed, and then it would create a penalty for individuals that bring their guns into those establishments. So that bill likely will be looked at this session, but it had robust sponsorship from your Burlington delegation. I think almost the entire delegation sponsored it, short of a few folks, and that will be an issue of discussion. Another bill in the Senate, just to note, is a bill which creates a penalty for the discharge of a firearm within 500 feet of a child care center or school, which, so. But that is my summary report. Happy to talk about any of these items.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate your being here this evening and your efforts on behalf of the city this legislative session. I do think we will hope to have you and or other members of your team back once or twice as the session moves forward. Appreciate the written report you gave us this evening, and if possible, would appreciate intermittently some similar reports to keep the council updated along those lines. We have a few minutes here before we need to turn to public forum, and so I saw Councilor Litwin first, and then we'll turn to you, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Litwin.
Thank you so much. And being mindful of time, I'll be quick. One of the bills, and please forgive me if you went over it and I just missed it, was H39, which was not in our top 5, but was in your report to us, which has been introduced to override the $1 million that was earmarked last session for the Overdose Prevention Center. And I really want Burlington residents to be aware that that is moving in the House somewhere. And B, I'd love if you could speak to this bill and what impact it may have on us now or in the future, particularly since I believe we just hired a consultant from Vermont Cares to come in and help us get started on that. So I'm concerned about this bill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The bill was introduced. It hasn't had a hearing yet. It's a long process, and so all I can say, I don't really, it's been introduced, it has co-sponsors, and we will certainly monitor that. It's not just to remove the money that's been allocated to Burlington. It's a full repeal of the statute. So, but so far there hasn't been any additional conversation.
Great, thank you. And I would just ask our distinguished mayor and dignitaries to, if we can potentially add that to our top 5/6 things to keep track of so that we can open that overdose prevention center. And thank you.
And if I could just add a very quick, just to clarify, Teresa Vizzini is an employee of the city, not a consultant. And also, there are hundreds of bills that get introduced in the legislature. Almost very few of them all get a hearing, let alone a walkthrough. So just to make sure, we are very, very early in the session. There will likely be at least 300 to 400 bills introduced in the House alone this session. So we, of course, will monitor it. But it is, just for folks who watch this and don't know the legislative process, there are hundreds of bills that don't even get considered. So we will watch it, but this doesn't mean that it will actually move.
Well, I'll sleep better tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bergman.
Thank you. David, a follow-up communication, not now, would be helpful on the no-cause eviction conversation. I think it would be very helpful for us to know what the testimony is, what the players are saying about it, what the legislators, where the lines of support and opposition are, all of that political framework, and so that we can understand how we can best influence that process, because our people really need it. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, that charter change hasn't been introduced yet. We anticipate that it will be. So,
I'm sorry, please, Jane. We'll get to public forum in a couple of minutes.
but happy to follow up.
Great, and from the report, it looked like they were just talking about it outside of our charter change, because I know that there was general legislation. So I think it would be helpful for the people of Burlington to know the political landscape with regard to landlord-tenant issues, and especially the no cause, whether it's for our charter change or not. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. We are coming up at 7 p.m. for public forum, but is there any other councilor that wishes to speak on this item? Councilor Barlow will give you the last word.
Thank you. And it's not on our top five, so excuse me if I'm broadening your scope. But one of the things that we've heard about in the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee is that GMT is facing a $1.5 million operating deficit. And our some members of our delegation had a meeting yesterday at a local restaurant, and I advocated for it there, but I'd like to advocate that that you maybe track that issue for us as it moves through. And I don't know, but maybe we would take this up again like we have the previous 2 years and introduce a resolution advocating that Burlington, wants this funding fully, restored so that we can have, we're not facing additional service cuts to GMT this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. David, again, Mayor, thank you very much for coming here this evening. It's good to put a face to the face of our efforts in Montpelier, and as mentioned, we'll look forward to having you back again at least a couple times before the session's over.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So the time is now 7:01 p.m. We had scheduled public forum for a time certain of 7 o'clock. Under our council rules, we will first hear from Burlington residents here in City Hall, and then among those Burlington residents online. We do at the moment only have Burlington residents signed up, both here in person and online. Each speaker will be provided 2 minutes. When I call your name, if you're here in person, please come to the table. Make sure the microphone is on and speak directly into it. For those online, I will let you know once you've been unmuted, and we'll put a timer up on Zoom. When providing comments, please direct them to me as the chair and not to any other individual. It is important that City Hall remain a safe place for those who serve, those in attendance, and those watching our meetings. We respect and value a diversity of opinions and perspectives on public issues. We ask, however, that all comments be free from individualized attacks, hate, harassment, obscenities, or other derogatory language about other people or groups based on any protected characteristic. We also ask that public comments avoid conduct which is unreasonably loud, disruptive, or discourteous. If I interrupt a speaker at any point in time, it will be to respectfully ask that they please act in accordance with these rules. If a speaker ignores that request and continues in violation of these rules, I will reserve the right to end public comment at that point in time. With that, we will go to our first Burlington resident here in City Hall, who is Len Whitehouse, to be followed by Bill Ochin.
Am I on?
You are on.
Okay. I'm glad this is a safe space. That's why I'm here. I'm here because this is a safe space. And FYI, what would you do? 2 Friday nights ago, I got a call from my daughter, who lives in the new north end of Burlington. Dad, there's an intruder in my yard. I've asked him to leave through the video camera. He won't leave. Call the cops, Christine. I'm on my way. Call me back. So I didn't realize I was going to go on a ride-along that night. Of course, I'm the driver, having to respond for a lack of police. No big deal, right? I'm glad this is a safe space. So I hopped in my car and broke every rule possible to get there. What was I doing? I was protecting my own. How? Any means I could. I had whatever I needed in order to do the job. Am I trained? No. Did I get there? Yes. Did I turn the intruder away? Yes. Was he hostile? Yes. So what did I do? Well, thank God I didn't pull it out and let him have it. So I stayed for an hour and a half to make sure that this guy, who was very aggressive, left. Now, I used my vehicle as my weapon in order to protect myself. My daughter is here today. Would she be if I didn't respond? Don't know. Did the police respond? No, they didn't. Why? Lack of funding. They didn't come. I spent an hour and a half making sure this gentleman moved his way down the avenue away from my family. I waited 2 hours for a response, a drive-by. Did it happen?
Thank you.
No. Thank you.
We're at 2 minutes.
Oh, you're at 2 minutes.
Yes.
This is a safe space.
Everyone is kept at 2 minutes, sir.
Everyone is kept at 2 minutes.
Sir.
I hope you get the point.
Sir, thank you.
What would
Thank
you do?
We're at 2 minutes.
Now, thank you
So we're 2
very
minutes.
much for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bill Ochin, who will be followed by Dave Marr.
Well, isn't that special? While you are deliberating staffing and funding for the police, I have a couple of things to share with you. At night during warm weather, barely 200 feet from this room, pimps and pushers operate openly with no concern for concealing their activities. These men and their overlords are professionals and highly organized. You can tell who they are because they're the only people on the street who aren't bombed out of their minds. I'm convinced that they're not from around here. They learn their trade as gang members, not affinity groups, gang members, in big cities, Springfield, Mass., New York City, Philadelphia, and cities in Connecticut and elsewhere. They have mastered the rudest and most brutal fundamentals of economics. That's why they're here. Burlington became marked as a soft target, as easy as picking cotton candy. I know about these operators because I've watched them at their craft, hustling bad dope and hustling young women. That last part deserves special attention. It is not sex work, as some would have you believe. It is human trafficking. I've seen these men march girls down College Street to the posh hotels and back again after they've been used. The gangs and the police both know that as things stand, the gangs have the police outnumbered, outgunned, outfunded, and have the ideological support of local media, liberal judges and prosecutors, and shamefully, this city government. If you want to find out for yourself, I invite you to come down midnight on a warm night, 200 feet from here, and watch for yourselves. Restoring this part of town will require massive investigative resources far beyond what is currently available. The Burlington Police Department must be given the tools and personnel they ask for, because we want a safe space.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dave Marr, to be followed by Christopher Aaron Felker.
Good evening. My name is Dave Marr. I've lived in Burlington, or the Burlington area, since I started at UVM in 1973. There is a resolution on tonight's agenda related to rebuilding the police department that I urge all of you to support. Between July of 2020 and July 2022, the Burlington Police Department was decimated by several City Council resolutions passed in response to police actions that occurred out of state. These resolutions have led to a feeling among many police officers that they are not supported by the local government. Tonight, you have the opportunity to move forward and show the police department where you stand. I urge all of you to show your support for the police department by voting in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christopher Aaron Felker, to be followed by Jane McDougall.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine,
So,
thank you.
Jane, we'll take your comment first, and then we'll do Christopher Aaron Felker.
Yeah, well, that's what he said.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Shay McDougall, and why I'm here is that we need more sidewalks fixed, and basically, because I live in Cathedral Square, there still is not enough fixing to the sidewalks. A lot of the elderly people are complaining about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall.
No, I don't need help. Thank you.
So our next speaker will be Christopher Aaron Felker, to be followed by Lee Morgan.
Good evening, Council. My name is Christopher Aaron Felker. I'm chairman of the Burlington Republican Party, and I'd like to thank those who came before me this evening, who spoke on behalf of supporting our police department and the resolution on tonight's agenda. I'd also like to echo what Jane was speaking about. It's nothing new to you to hear me speaking about how important investing in our sidewalk infrastructure is. It is fulfillment of our promise to those who have disabilities, and the elderly. We promised in 1989 with the Americans with Disabilities Act that no more will people be second-class citizens and relegated to a second-class lifestyle. We have a commitment to our people to and to our economy to make sure our sidewalks are navigable and safe. So thank you, Jane, for bringing that up.
I brought it up for months and years.
Right on.
Nothing has been done about it.
I know, it's disappointing. I am here to speak on another matter tonight. For years now, I've been known to be kind of controversial on some topics. I defend female-only spaces, I defend women's sports, and I defend sex-based rights. Seem to be pearl-clutching to many people, including a local gossip columnist who's here today. Well, today it's 2025, and a new world has started. Today, women's spaces are being defended. Violent males are being removed from women's prisons. Women's sports are being defended. The last administration's disgraceful attacks upon Title IX have been revoked. Women's professional sporting associations are choosing to defend the safety of real women over the feelings of mediocre men. And woman is being enshrined and codified in law as an adult human female. The horrific abuses and exploitation of vulnerable children is finally and rightfully drawing to an end. Thank you. God bless America.
Our next speaker will be Lee Morgan, to be followed by Karen Long.
Just pulling up my document here. Okay, hi, my name is Lee Morgan. I'm a resident of Ward 3. I'm a proud trans man, and my pronouns are he, him. So I have an edited version, Council President Travers, of what I sent to you earlier. This does follow council rules. Please let me read it. I'm not going to be able to make it through this whole letter. I'll read what I can today, and I'll just keep coming back to public comment so I can read this into the record. Dear Mayor Mulvaney Stanek and members of the Burlington City Council, I am writing to formally submit my resignation from the Burlington Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront Commission. Public service is, at its core, about envisioning and working towards something better, not for ourselves, but for our neighbors, our community, and the generations to come. Sometimes that vision meets resistance, but I've always believed the most transformative work begins when we refuse to be silenced. I ran in the 2024 town meeting day race. It is with great disappointment that I must acknowledge how my tenure on the Parks Commission has been systematically undermined by the Democratic majority, including blocking this resignation letter from appearing on the consent agenda. The harm caused by this hostility has been devastating and deeply personal. Projects I championed, such as the initiative to address syringe litter and provide pathways into treatment, were stripped of their intended purpose under Democratic influence. These actions jeopardize the role of syringe service programs, weaponizing my work against my own people and the very communities it was designed to serve. During the race for town meeting day, redacted went even further, utilizing my own family, staunch Democrats, in their campaign, which utilized supporters engaging in transphobia. I'll be back next time. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just note for the record that the reference letter arrived earlier today, well beyond our deadline for posting on the consent agenda. I will also note for the record Lee Morgan's announced resignation from the Parks Commission, which will be advertised as a vacancy. Thank you. Our next speaker is Karen Long, who will be followed by Michael Long.
Hi, thank you. I know you've got a lot of complaints. I think you're making progress with sidewalks, and I really appreciate that for everybody, not just seniors and whatever. But I came here, I didn't get to finish really last week or 2 weeks ago, but I want to celebrate good news. I really feel like our public safety measures are working. I'd like to share this with the gentleman that's so upset about not knowing who to call. I feel people I know are getting, if it's an emergency, the police come. If you let them know it's an emergency and dial 911, they do come. So I'm really sorry about what happened. But I do want to say, a shout out for Burlington, Outdoor Gear Exchange, if you've read the newspaper, Free Press and Digger. They are closing their Essex location to refocus energy and resources on the flagship store on Church Street. The owner says things are looking up. More people are coming downtown, more people are shopping, restaurants are full. He is saying we can build this community back to what it once was, which means focusing on Burlington. I also read just today, Wilder Wines, they are staying in downtown. They are moving to a larger storefront. Brandy Melville, which is a chain store, is hot. My teenage granddaughter loves that store. We have a lot of college kids. We need stores like this for a vibrant downtown. I was very lost and sad when we lost Pottery Barn, Victoria's Secret, and Williams-Sonoma. Great places to buy gifts. I never used to go to the U Mall. Anyway, I feel like we need to celebrate. For too many years, fear of downtown has been politically exploited. This is not honest or constructive. We can address our problems with good faith, goodwill, good sense, and facts.
Thank you, Karen. Our next speaker will be Michael Long, to be followed by Todd DeLuca. And then our last signed-up speaker here in City Hall will be Nolan Rogers.
Good evening. Politics is often petty, with grandstanding, horse trading, and gotcha moments galore. But it's also a serious undertaking, a big responsibility that people depend on for the quality of their lives and sometimes even for life itself. We're blessed in the upcoming council races with well-qualified candidates, in contrast with some figures on the national stage who are assuming far more powerful positions they may not be even marginally qualified to fill. A current and former Democratic councilor came to my door last week to drop off a brochure for the East District candidate. I shared my concern that some Democratic councilors were putting their energy into sabotaging our mayor. They assured me that they want the mayor to succeed, and then I noted that coincidentally I just watched the caucus on YouTube, and there was an unmistakable emphasis on the need for Democrats on the council to provide collaborative balance to the mayor's progressive administration. Now, we all love collaboration, but we collaborate all together, not in opposition to someone else. We either win together or divided fail. None of us are enemies, and seeing one another even a little bit that way, especially on the council, will only prevent the council from doing right by the people and the city they serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Todd DeLuca, to be followed by Nolan Rogers.
Hi, City Councilors, Mayor, Mr. President. It's good to see you all. I want to speak briefly about public safety. I just wanted to share, I've talked before about some of the threatening or violent incidents that have occurred to me, and I just wanted to share some more about that. Here are some of the threats I've received in the past 7 months. And for anyone listening online, there might be some bad language, so if your children are sensitive to that, please take note. On July 9th, on Old Dump Road in the Old North End, quote, "I want your effing name, dude. When I get my effing hands on you, I'm breaking your effing neck. Don't worry about my effing name, worry about the effing hospital when I get my hands on you." On October 21st at College Street and Church Street, "Keep that effing phone off me, my N-word." On December 17th at City Hall Park, after being recorded and followed by a stranger from City Hall Park to Church Street. Nah, I just gonna find out what vehicle you're in, and then we'll be able to spot you everywhere. And following that incident, online on Christmas Day, stay out of my crack scrant omen land. We all know where you live. Dem sea caves, though. And Saturday, from the same account online, Saturday the 11th of January. Dogwater News turning you to Poser Nightcrawler. You're next. And there was one more incident on the 13th, but I think that gives you the idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last speaker here in City Hall will be Nolan Rogers. We'll then turn online. Our first online speaker will be Eliana Fox.
Hi, I just wanted to talk about the water bond. I'm excited that we're looking to put it on the ballot. I'm really looking forward to that. And I just want to, like, from my perspective, I know some people talk about the price of it. I also know that typically we get bond issues passed, which is fantastic. Really like that people like infrastructure. But I just want to give a shout out to maintenance. Maintenance is really hard to do, and it's really expensive, and it takes time and planning, which are all kind of hard things to get around. So I really am excited that we're doing much needed maintenance on our very critical infrastructure, which will allow us to grow in the future. And I also want to say, like, from a slightly different perspective, every bit that we continue to defer just makes it a lot more expensive for people in the future, both because repairing things is more expensive than building them and fixing them immediately, and because we have to pay interest on any debt that we have. I guess in our case, it's great because we can have ratepayers pay for it, but a lot of things do come with interest, so it costs even more money. So really looking forward to that getting on the ballot and getting passed so we can have even better water infrastructure. And I'm also super glad that we can come together around sidewalks, and people like sidewalks. So that's great. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. I am sharing my screen here for our online speakers. And our first online speaker is Eliana Fox. Eliana, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself now. Eliana, you could try again, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm so glad to be following Nolan's comments as well. Hello, City Councilors. My name is Eliana Fox. I'm a Ward 7 resident and member of the Public Works Commission. I'm here tonight to encourage you to authorize the lake, water, and general obligation bonds for inclusion on the March 4th town meeting day ballot. All three of these bonds are important and will invest in critical public infrastructure and assets such as snowplows and fire trucks, repairing several miles of sidewalks and streets, and our drinking water and storm/wastewater systems. And I want to talk a little bit more about why the lake and water bonds are so critical. I know folks are concerned about the size of these bonds, but this is what happens when a city defers maintenance on critical infrastructure for decades. We need to understand that this water infrastructure supplies our hospital, our schools, homes, and businesses, and doing nothing to fix and replace systems at the end of their useful lives will cause expensive and critical failures more frequently. The cost of repairs and construction for new wastewater and freshwater infrastructure will always go up if we do nothing now. Additionally, these upgrades are also key to our city's continued development. Without expansion of our water and wastewater capacity across the city, the state can prevent development of additional housing and commercial space. This would cripple the city's ongoing efforts to expand the tax base and combat the high cost of living through economic development. Deferring this maintenance will only perpetuate our housing shortage and cost of living concerns, so we really can't afford to kick this can down the road. I really appreciate the time tonight, and I encourage everyone to go to burlingtonvt.gov/2025 water bonds to learn more about these bonds.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Etter, who will be followed by Gene Keller. Robert, I believe that is you. I only see you there as Robert, but you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, let me just get the timer reset here. Okay, go ahead.
First, I'd like to address the proposed budget increase in bond issues. With property taxes already at unjust and unsustainable levels, the city should only be looking at budget cuts to departments other than public safety. If bonds and infrastructure are needed due to deferred and overspending in other areas, then the city needs to be shifting its existing budget priorities to support those, not demanding higher taxes on residents. But my main point is on public safety. A lot of people have commented on that already, but I was deeply disappointed by the mayor and her gag order, which fosters further mistrust of police among major political elements in the city. Some may say that the gag order was needed to avoid trial corruption, but this is misinformation, since facts like criminal history are material and discoverable for trial. More problematic is asserting that gagging factual information and a policy of not prosecuting criminals is necessary to counteract things like bias. Such policies are based on outdated and discredited beliefs about policing. The reality is that refusal to prosecute criminals allows them to continue to victimize vulnerable communities. When progressive elements demand these policies, they are valuing ideology over data and public good, or perhaps they just believe that the suffering of communities advances their agenda more than prosperity of these communities. In any case, at all levels of government, when populist leaders use power of executive order to muzzle career professionals from stating facts relevant to public discourse, it undermines transparency, accountability, and our democracy itself. Thank you.
I see a Gene online. I'm assuming that is Gene Keller. You should be able to go ahead, Gene.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm speaking about the UVM Medical Center MOU, and I'm speaking on behalf of 11 of my neighbors here in our Eastern District in Ward 1. I'll read their names if I have time at the end. The added building heights proposed for the new campus overlay will exceed the height of the water tower. This may actually necessitate the addition of blinking lights on top of the building to meet FAA requirements. Can the council, based on a PowerPoint slide cross-section view, actually visualize how high these dense buildings will be in relation to the surrounding residential neighborhoods in Colchester Avenue? And please note, the residents of the Eastern District, citizens most affected by these changes, are being denied full representation during this debate and vote because of the vacancy of the Eastern District Council seat. So therefore, I and my neighbors request that you take these actions prior to voting on the proposed MOU. First, require completion of a daylighting study to evaluate the impact of this MOU on both Colchester and East Avenues. You'll receive a request about this from Martha Long, and this is directly in response to the concern about canyoning on these two streets. Second, require the hospital to float numerous highly visible balloons marking the boundaries of the requested height allowances so that the impact of these height allowances can be easily visualized by the council and the residents prior to the vote. Third, please postpone action on the MOU until these studies are done and until the residents of the Eastern District are represented on the council by election of a councilor to that seat. You are going to be setting policy for 20 years, and the record is simply not complete enough for such dramatic changes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Martha Lang, who will be followed by Mark Leopold and then Sharon Busher. Martha, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. My name is Martha Lang, and I live in Ward 1. And I want to thank all the city councilors who have taken an interest in the MOU between the University of Vermont Medical Center and the city of Burlington. I live across from the medical center, so I've taken an intense interest in what's going on. They could potentially build acres of buildings 150 feet high on a piece of land that is 40 feet above the neighborhood. The building that concerns me most is the 8 to 10-story building on Colchester Avenue that could have a footprint of 1.5 acres, destroying all of the full-grown trees on Colchester Avenue. I've sent you information, and I'm sure that you'll take a close look at it. I suggest that the city councilors have a chance to do a site visit and that the neighbors should be able to at least walk around with you, to wait until there's a complete representation of the councilors for Ward 1. And fortunately, the University of Vermont Medical Center has an architectural firm that can do computerized generated experiences to give you an idea of what will happen to the neighborhood. I strongly urge you to ask the medical center to do one of these studies. And I appreciate any help that the counselors could give the neighborhood. Carter's been wonderful, and Jean Bergman, thank you very, very much. I wish the best of luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mark Leopold, and then our last speaker will be Sharon Busher. Mark, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Today is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi Auschwitz death camp. Survivors and international leaders from more than 40 countries attended, including German Chancellor Scholz, Ukrainian President Zelensky, Britain's King Charles, French President Macron, Polish President Duda, and many other world leaders. Some members of this city council are sporting neckwear that links them to Hamas. They might not think it doesn't link them to terrorists, but it does. Hamas propaganda is swaying many people globally and locally to believe a false narrative that all Gazans are innocent victims. To minimize the Hamas reality, ignoring the fundamental objective of Hamas to kill all Jews in the world, starting between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. This is nothing less than what Hitler tried to do in Europe and the Middle East. Hitler and his Nazi mob failed to accomplish Jewish genocide. The Jewish people will continue to live forever in the land of Israel, Judea, and Samaria. From the river to the sea, Jews will be free. Thank you very much for your time.
Our last speaker will be Sharon Busher. Sharon, please. Sharon, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, President Travers. I wanted to speak in support of a number of the moneyed issues on the agenda tonight. I really feel very strongly about the $20 million capital general obligation bonds for capital improvements. I think that it hits lots of different departments and identifies lots of needs and is reasonable and affordable. And so I want to applaud that Ashley and the administration and the council for hopefully moving that forward. I realize it takes 2/3 to pass that, but I'm hoping that the community will support that. The other money item, the drinking water $20 million bond, is one also that I feel is very clearly identifiable. And I'm not sure if it's affordable because that bond is wrapped into the wastewater and stormwater bond. And so I can't tweeze those apart, although the graph showed some number amount, but I don't know what the dollar amount would be. I did ask the question to Megan Moyer, what if the $20 million water bond passed and the stormwater and wastewater bond didn't? Would we be able to proceed, and what would that cost be? I am still concerned about the dollar amount for the stormwater and wastewater. I know the need. I don't think anyone has to try to re-justify it. It's clear. I just don't think it's affordable. I asked about looking at options as far as paying some and having a balloon payment that you refinance at the end. I want to make it work, but I'm very concerned about affordability. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. That was our last speaker for public forum, so we will go ahead and now close public forum at 7:35 p.m. I will note that after we get through the next two items on our agenda, we do have a second public hearing scheduled on the 3 charter change items scheduled for town meeting day, so we will get to that momentarily. But that takes us now to item 3 on our agenda, which is Mayor, General City Affairs. And Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to start with some really good news for the city of Burlington, and I think I saw some of you in the crowd on Sunday. We had a pretty epic, I think that makes me cool, epic, I'm looking at my younger colleagues on the, I won't look that way, all right, I think it was epic. My badge is falling down, it was so epic. We had a big parade and celebration for the UVM men's soccer team, who are Division I champions from 2024, up and down Church Street here on Sunday. The governor was in town. We had all of UVM leadership, including the acting president for UVM, and then the entire team, their coaches, assistant coaches, et cetera. It was a really joyous and celebratory time downtown. I want to thank UVM for such strong partnership. I also want to thank the 4 departments for the city in particular who really helped pull off a safe and joyful event. Of course, our Burlington Police Department, who kept us safe there, our fire department as well, our Department of Public Works. If you were downtown, it felt like this New York City Marathon. I know Councilor McKnight and I happened to be in New York City at the time. I've never seen such a thing. You put snow plows to help block just for extra security around a packed area. So we had DPW on site to help, as well as, of course, our Business, Workforce, and Development Department, which runs our marketplace, who deeply partnered to pull off such a wonderful event. So thank you. I hope folks were able to celebrate and participate. It was a really joyful time downtown. Cold, but joyful. My kids bailed about halfway through the parade. It was very cold. I want to move on to community safety. And a few updates here. First, I want to appreciate the community and all of our city staff who were part of operating an emergency weather shelter for the extreme cold we had last week. We had 3 days we had to operate per the new city policy of -10 degrees and some additional criteria. We were able to house 40 or so people the first night, and then somewhere between 80 to 85 people on the second and third nights. And that is quite significant in terms of supporting folks who are living unsheltered outside. Every time we've run a emergency weather shelter in the city, we do a deep debrief with all staff involved, including BFD, BPD, our CEDO team, parks, and to make sure we are looking at each time, how can we improve? How do we know what worked well? How do we continue to improve our operations to make sure that guests are safe, staff are safe, and we're understanding the larger impact on community? But again, I really want to appreciate the staff who work 24-hour, overnight shifts, I should say, to make sure we are able to open and operate the shelter. On Thursday, I'll be attending, along with members of my staff, the Burlington Police Department swearing-in ceremony. There'll be several new professional staff, CSOs, CSLs, dispatch, who'll be sworn in, and 1 new officer. I've asked my team to share that with counselors in case you happen to be free to help celebrate and welcome new staff at the Burlington Police Department. Last week, I was able to meet with Detective Sergeant Tremblay, who folks might know was on the panel of our last community safety forum to specifically talk about drug trafficking and the city's strategic response to that with our detective division. And I was able to dive a bit more into the details of what are the gaps related to our drug trafficking system in our court system, and then just within our capacity. I do want to note that they really take quite an innovative approach, and now that it's happened, we had a bust in the Old North End on the edge of the center of downtown that was very strategically built, and I hope you read that press release. It went into detail around the strategy and the pre-planning that went in to utilize our CAPE division, as well as our detectives, of course, to not only disrupt acute harm that traffickers are doing and taking advantage of folks in apartments, but also the wraparound with folks who are really the victims of a lot of these trafficking schemes that happen. So I really want to commend the Detective Sergeant Tremblay and the whole team and the wider team who really was engaged. It included a lot of our partners as well, Howard and CHT, et cetera. We're working towards some upgrades for the Burlington Police Department building. We're working on a public-private partnership. I hope to bring back more details. Council President Travers was in a meeting with myself and a critical partner, Ernie Promolo, to explore what can possibly happen in the immediacy while we continue to figure out the scope for a larger public safety merged building. There's immediate needs, given some safety issues that are quite concerning with our rank and file staff working at that building, as well as just general upgrades that are really necessary and long overdue in that building. So I'm really appreciative of Mr. Parmalu and the ability to kind of think, how do we deal with immediacy while we also work and putting the steps in place that will build a state-of-the-art facility to meet both our central fire district needs, our police department needs, and then this third entity I've been talking about around public health needs that relate to community safety, so we can have a dynamic response in years to come. Finally, related to community safety, I want to mention, to save the date for those who love these, our next community safety forum will be March 13th. We usually do it on the first Thursday. Town meeting day is a big lift the first week of March. So March 13th, we'll be focusing on hate and bias related incidences. There is a lot churning around us in terms of on the federal level, and we want to make sure our community understands our response and how we will have been addressing and will be addressing hate and incidences of bias. Related to housing, if you follow me on social media, you saw a terrifying video of me going up an outside elevator with no walls on them. It was a construction elevator to City Place, which is very tall. It's 11 stories. And I stood next to the wall because I wanted to make sure, I don't know, just giving you a little synopsis into my weird days I have. But we toured City Place, and the reason I'm bringing it up for housing is folks might be curious as they've seen that building rise from the pit, if you will. The south building and the south tower is almost ready to come online. It's quite impressive, the tour, once you're inside and outside the scary elevator. There are 11 stories, and within that particular tower, 53 new studio or one-bedroom apartments will be in that and coming online this summer. There's a hotel, there's public community space that will be there, there's commercial space on the floor. And then to the north towers, you can see the elevator shafts being built now. That will take a little bit longer to build. Those will include more housing units. That's where the perpetually affordable units will be. More housing is coming online immediately in terms of the city as we continue to grow our capacity. We'll talk about that later on the infrastructure bonds. And we're continuing to look across departments around our housing needs with our department heads. That will be the theme of our next couple of department head meetings in February and March. On to climate. The three staffers within the city have been convening, as I've mentioned, various city employees across departments. Jennifer Green from Burlington Electric Department, Dan Cahill from Parks and Recreation Department, and then Sinead Murray from my office have been working to inventory the work regarding climate mitigation and adaptation in the city. They engage even more departments. When we start with a few, we want to make sure we are comprehensive. That inventory process will be completed at the end of the month, which is Friday, and then we will launch our invitations to climate advisors after that. We have a robust, long list of advisors I will consider, but we'll put out those invitations shortly. And then finally, there's a number of executive orders coming out of Washington, D.C. from the president. A couple of them are related specifically to funding in general that are impacting states and local municipalities. There's some that we're tracking for climate-related electric vehicles, for example. And we are tracking these seriously because a loss of funding would have a negative impact on the bottom line for local municipalities and taxpayers. So we're tracking that diligently, and we'll keep you up to date. On to finances. I mentioned earlier, so I won't repeat this, we met with the state treasurer. Later this week, the Tax Fairness Working Group will be convened for the first time. We'll see Councilor Barlow and Councilor Kane there, as well as some former city councilors in the mix, among other community members and staff. We're bringing the budget advisors back for an initial review of fiscal year 26, which that budget, which we did an initial review with the Board of Finance, and we're making some finer tweaks to that. This will be a high-level review to look at our budget structural gap yet again for this year, though it's smaller, and our solutions to make sure we're doing our due diligence with the review of what solutions we've come up with to offer a balanced budget, because those budget advisors were very helpful last year and include a former mayor, include former city councilors, and again, fiscal folks from our community. A word on the election, because we'll be about to mail ballots at the next council meeting. So we do have an all-ballot mailed system. So to remind voters for town meeting day, since we'll be talking about several items tonight, Ballots will be mailed sometime between February 10th and 12th to all registered voters. I want to remind folks we have same-day registration, so if you don't get a ballot and you've moved and you didn't maybe remember since the last election, you can come to a poll and register, the one that's closest to your place of residence. We also have all resident voting for local matters, folks who have legal status, and that is available for folks for any of the questions being considered tonight by council. And then finally, I just want to mention a few other highlights, especially because the Burlington School District is here this evening. We're holding quarterly meetings, the superintendent and a couple of his staff and my office, and we had one recently, and we focused on school safety, tracking whether our response at the beginning of the school district was sufficient around the hotspot areas on Cherry Street. They reported back that they really appreciated the support and things have calmed down a bit, and appreciated the additional coordination with BPD. We're exploring points of collaboration around language access, how we can support the district around restorative practices as their federal funding has shifted and they have less restorative practitioners in some of the schools, and how we can leverage our CJC. We also talked about after-school programming. That's part of, again, the gap in youth services for critical ages in our community we've been seeing. And then finally, picking up a stalled MOU between the Burlington School District and Burlington Police Department to make sure we have stronger communication and coordination to support them with the needs that they may have. And then finally, I started you on a high note, I'm going to leave you on a high note. We had two really robust, wonderful Martin Luther King Day events last week. I saw, again, some of you at both of them. This space was a celebratory space with the Greater Burlington Multicultural Center. I was able to invite the mayor of Selma, Alabama to Burlington. Again, he's been here several times. We had great gospel music. It was a great event organized by Patrick Brown, who's a real gem of this city and has done so diligently for maybe even as long as I've lived here, an annual Martin Luther King Day event. And then the next day, there was a benefit organized for the Richard Kemp Center at the UU at the top of the block. I think it was sold out. They were able to raise $10,000 to send Burlington youth to the African American History and Culture Museum at Washington, D.C. It's part of the Smithsonian. It was a really moving event. Some of the youth have gone before, came to speak, and it was a great day. Last two pieces, there was another great event in the New North End for Plan B TV, which I saw several of you. I really appreciate the planning department's innovation around smart ways to engage community, so it's not a talking head moment. Lots of good conversations around. Several partners were there, so it wasn't just planning, it was parks with open space. We had some of our partners in the community who are trying to encourage walkability, getting people out of their cars. What do we do with housing and green space? Those are the kinds of questions kicked off. And then finally, and my staff always knows, anything with youth, put it on my calendar. I will make it happen. Burlington City Arts had a wonderful opening. I encourage you to check out this exhibit on the second floor of a strong partnership between BCA and our Burlington School District, again, our high school and Burlington Tech Center. It's called Becoming Vermont. And about a dozen or so Burlington youth collaborated with real-time artists, and all of their items are on exhibit. It was really exhilarating to see their families and their partners all there, and their educators in particular. The show's up for a bit. I encourage you to check it out, and I hope we can find ways to continue to sustain those strong partnerships and leverage our beautiful BCA asset. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item on our agenda is City Council General City Affairs. Just a bit of a roadmap. I do see we're joined now by City Assessor Turner. We do have a Board of Abatement meeting that we need to turn to. So after City Council General City Affairs, we will briefly recess the City Council to turn to that meeting where we only have a consent agenda, but appreciate your being here, Assessor Turner. So City Council General City Affairs. Now, is there any councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? Councilor Newbeezer, and then Councilor Grant, and then Councilor Barlow.
I just want to note for members of the public in Ward 1, because we discussed it a few times in our MPA, CDNR referred a resolution to study how we can double the funding for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in Burlington. I'm really excited for that. I'm excited to work with city staff to come up with solutions to increase funding for affordable housing without relying on regressive taxes, like the property tax municipally. So I'm excited for that work, grateful for CDNR to refer that unanimously, and look forward to hopefully getting that study rolling next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. Councilor Grant and then Councilor Barlow.
Thank you. I had some things I wanted to cover on public safety side, but I'm just, based on some comments that have been made, I kind of want to switch up things a little bit because I continue to be concerned about false narratives and misinformation, and that's just not a really good space to be in with regards to public safety. And also I have concerns about when people don't feel that they are getting the help that they need. One of the things I talk about when I meet with my constituents is that everyone should be prepared or even do like a little self-drill. If you had an emergency and had to call 911, and it was keeping in mind that our police department has a priority response plan, and that priority response plan does give the top priority to individuals that are in physical jeopardy. How you communicate to dispatch is everything. And sometimes when people are in a panic or scared or concerned, they don't always give the information that dispatch needs in order to properly determine what the priority of a call is. So I can't go into additional details, but happy to have people email me at megrant@burlingtonvt.gov. Happy to schedule a Zoom or a phone call and just review some tidbits. But it's just really important to be prepared, including being prepared to describe where you are and describe, exactly why you or you feel someone else is in physical danger. I do want to make sure that people understand that with regards to the press releases coming from the police department, this has been an issue going back a few years. I think it's important to understand that the mayor did not place a gag order on our police department or our police chief. The mayor's office is only requesting, as they do with other departments, that they run press releases by the mayor's office. It is an issue when our chief of police is, we have a defense lawyer requesting the gag order, and that's who requested the gag order. So we need to be very, very clear. And I'll leave it at that. I think everyone's saying that the mayor did that. That's just simply not correct. I do understand that, someone's criminal history can be used in discovery at a trial. The key words are at a trial. I believe that the chief of police had every right to say what he said and to express his opinions and concerns, but not referencing an open case. That's what the problem is. I shared in Front Porch Forum Post today a link to the survey from the BPOA of our police officers. It is long, but it's important, and I would ask the public to, do their best to read it, because there's a lot of really important information in there that we should be using as our guide to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. I have Councilor Barlow, and then are there any other councilors for General City Affairs? Great. Councilor Litwin. So Councilor Barlow and then Councilor Litwin.
Thank you, President Travers. I just wanted to concur with the mayor's sentiment on yesterday. It was an awesome day in Burlington for anybody who was able to participate in that parade. And it was almost, I guess, universally thought of that way. I stopped into a couple of restaurants after the parade, and they said that on days in January where they've been struggling, and some say their revenues are off like 20%, normally in January, their restaurants were full. So not only was it a great celebration for Burlington, but it was a good shot in the arm for a slow January for downtown businesses as well. So yeah, it was awesome. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Litwin.
Thanks. I just have a few quick items.
The first is with our police chief leaving anytime between now and April, I begin to get concerned, and I'd love for us to get at a future meeting an update about the search for our new police chief. And he indicated his resignation back in November, and so I'd really like to get us like a timeline of what's happened so far, and kind of a projected timeline for when we can expect the formation of the search team and so on and so forth. I know that I think the only step we've taken so far is acquiring a search firm. I'm not entirely sure because we haven't received a robust update. The second piece is that related to the public releases from the police department that were brought up this evening. I think there's reasonable concerns from both sides on this issue, and so I believe the HR committee, which is chaired by Councilor Carpenter to my right, will be taking up a conversation at an upcoming meeting. I think it's February 3rd, and so if there's interest in attending that meeting virtually, they're not usually as super exciting, but we try to have fun. And you know, some of the things that we've talked about or that I've thought about is you know, offering sort of hopefully a neutral space where we can talk about templating. We can talk about what's called DD30, which is the communications policies, which there are some questions about whether they were fully followed, and if they are, and if we need to make adjustments to the personnel manual, which we are just on the verge of approving as a committee. So I'm personally wondering if we need to have some special carve-outs, and so I'd love to be a partner with the administration and with the police department and with the HR committee to work collaboratively to find something that feels good for everyone, including the public. And then lastly, I just really want to thank the members of the Board of Health who have been working really diligently on evaluating the syringe, or taking on the work that this council assigned to them, evaluating solutions to our syringe litter situation, looking at programs around the country. They're in the process of drafting a final report to prepare for us soon. And I just am very grateful for the level of work that they have put in and the special meetings that they have put on their calendar to be able to meet our ambitious deadlines. So we've got some great public health experts on that group, and I'm looking forward to their analysis, and hopefully we can enact some of the suggestions that they have. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. I do not have any, Councilor Broderick, yes.
Thank you. I originally wasn't going to speak, but because Councilor Ballot mentioned that the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee is meeting tomorrow at 5:30 at 645 Pine Street. And one item of note, because Councilor Barlow had mentioned it when we were talking to the lobbyist earlier this meeting, is that we're talking about the Green Mountain Transit FY26 assessment. And so if folks have thoughts, I would encourage people to come and speak in the meeting and listen to what they have to say, because as previously said, it's the thought of our city losing vital public transportation. It's very, very critical. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. I do not have any other councilors in the queue now. So seeing none, we will turn to the next item on our agenda, which, as I mentioned, we will now briefly recess the City Council meeting at 7:59 p.m. and call to order our meeting as the Board of Abatement at 7:59 p.m. The first item on our agenda for that meeting is a motion to adopt the agenda, and Councilor Carpenter, as the chair of our Tax Abatement Committee, could I turn to you for a motion to adopt our agenda?
Thank you. I would move to adopt the agenda of the Board of Tax Abatement.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Shannon. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. The only item on this agenda is our consent agenda. Councilor Carpenter, may I turn to you for a motion on the consent agenda?
I would move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Shannon. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. With no other business before the Board of Abatement, I will adjourn the Board of Abatement meeting at 8 p.m. and resume our City Council meeting at 8 p.m. And that takes us now to item 6 in our agenda, which is a second public hearing on charter changes for the March 4th, 2025 annual city election. There are 3 proposed charter changes scheduled to appear on the city's town meeting day ballot. At our last City Council meeting, we hosted the first public hearing on these items. This is the second and final public hearing on these items for the council to, and the public to have an opportunity to be heard with respect to them. We then have an item reserved on our deliberative agenda where if any amendments are proposed on items referenced in public hearings, either the first or the second, that would be a place to do so. We did hear from some members of the public at the first public hearing. I do not have anyone signed up in advance for our second public hearing, but we'll open the floor to folks here in City Hall, as well as anyone online. If you're online in the Zoom and wish to use the raise hand function to be heard during the second public hearing on the charter change items, please say so. Is there anyone here in City Hall that wishes to be recognized on this item? Is there anyone online who wishes to be recognized on this item? I'll ask a second time if anyone here in City Hall or online wishes to be recognized in the second public hearing on our charter change items. All right, seeing no one, we will close the second public hearing on these items. And we'll turn to item 7, which is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt our consent agenda and take the actions indicated?
So moved.
Councilor Litwin, is that a second by you, Councilor Shannon? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. So we will now turn to our deliberative agenda. Before getting into our deliberative agenda, I will mention that the council, albeit on some important issues, has had a couple meetings here that have gone very late into the evening. To try to avoid that tonight, I have put time limitations on each of the deliberative agenda items and have informed Councilors Bergman and Barlow, among others, that I do intend on strictly sticking to those time limits so that we can get out of here at a reasonable hour. What that means is when the time beeps on our timer there on an item, I do plan on calling the question on the underlying motion. I do hope that I've tried to allot sufficient time to each of these items such that folks have an opportunity to be heard. Item 8.1, as I just mentioned around the second public hearing, is a placeholder for any potential charter change amendments based on comments received at either our first or second public hearing. We didn't receive any comments at our second public hearing, so any amendment would have to be based on items received at our first public hearing. No councilor had indicated to me that they intended on bringing an amendment forward based on items heard at the first public hearing, but if any councilor wishes to be recognized, now would be the opportunity to do so. Councilor Litwin.
Don't worry, I won't frighten you.
Well, it's only an opportunity to bring forward a motion to amend.
I understand.
It's not an opportunity for debate.
Nope, not trying to debate. Well, never mind then.
Okay. So is there any motion to amend a charter change item? Okay. Seeing none then, we will move to the next item on our deliberative agenda. What that means is that these 3 charter change items are locked in as previously passed by the council and will appear on our town meeting day ballot with short form ballot language. We have our next 3 items here, items 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4 are resolutions from our chair of the Charter Change Committee, Councilor Bergman, with short form ballot language for those three items. Councilor Bergman, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I'm assuming you may be able to speak to perhaps all three items as a group here, if that's possible?
I can try.
Okay.
Would you like me to do that?
Yes, and then I think,
Okay.
if possible, of course, we can divide the question if a councilor seeks it, but I would suggest that we take all three items as a single motion when you're done.
Sure. Let me move to waive all the readings and adopt all of the three resolutions, and very briefly have the floor back to just explain a little bit.
Okay. Councilor Bergman has moved a joint motion on the resolutions posted under sections 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilor Grant. Councilor Bergman, the floor is yours.
Great. We're going to have a large ballot, and consequently, it has been determined primarily, I think, by the clerk's office, rightfully so, as the administrators of the election, that we can use the state-authorized authority to have what is called short-form ballots. It's our attempt to put into plain language what we are proposing for the voters to vote on, knowing full well that each and every polling place and the ballots that are sent to all the voters will have the full language in them, but the ballot itself will have a short form. And part of this process requires us to determine that we need to have a short form. So the resolutions that we have in front of us, in a whereas clause, but I think it speaks effectively, calls on to, or says that we are determining that we need the short form. I will not go into them except to say the three charter changes relate to the rental notifications that we are allowed to regulate by ordinance. We are seeking to basically have the authority to have effective and efficient notifications that meet the housing crisis of our time. The second one relates to the charter, to the redistricting. Our charter has the actual boundaries of all of our districts, and therefore that means that the legislature and the governor get to vote on whether we divide wards 4 and 7 on North Avenue or some other way, and they get to vote on whether we divide wards 2 and 3 on either North Street or Elmwood Avenue. I could go on. It makes no sense to me, and I think it has made no sense to anybody that has dealt with this issue, including this council thus far, to think that folks in Brattleboro or Derby or Montgomery or wherever should tell us where we should draw the lines. The voters of the city of Burlington should decide that, and that is what we are doing with this. And the last is that we are asserting or reintroducing to the voters the prohibition on firearms in liquor, in bars, fundamentally. The theory being that guns and alcohol don't mix. There are exceptions. We heard comments related to that before, but those exceptions in terms of like owners and staff are built in. Law enforcement, they're built into the provision. This is the exact language that voters, I think 70% voted in favor of in 2014 and have been sitting on the shelf. And we have been advised that it would be prudent for us to have a reaffirmation, and therefore we are asking the voters to do that. And all of these get voted on. If they are passed by the city voters, then they get to send down to Montpelier. The legislature takes it up. They vote on it. If they approve it, it goes to the governor. And if the governor disapproves it, then there is a an action that the legislature can take to override. We have been here many times. That's just what the process is. And I look forward to us getting these before the voters, and thank you for that. I think relatively short, but not minute description.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Does any other councilor wish to be recognized on any one of the three proposed short-form ballot measures? Councilor Broderick.
I just have a point of information. On our agenda, under item 8.2, there are two documents showing the short-term ballot language for the rental notifications. Which one are we voting on, or is there no difference and it was just a mistake?
In my quick look, I didn't see any difference between the two. I'm seeing an affirmation by Councilor Litwin.
There's no difference between the two. For the sake of clarity, after the first version was posted, Councilor Litwin asked to be added as a co-sponsor to the short-form ballot language regarding the authority to regulate rental notifications and notification periods. And so that is the only difference between the originally posted and the second posted, is that Councilor Litwin and Bergman are both listed as sponsors. Good question, though, Councilor Broderick. Thank you. Does any other councilor wish to be recognized on either one of these short-form ballot measures? All right. Seeing none, then we will go to a vote. This is on the joint motion to waive the reading and adopt the resolutions posted under 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. Mayor, sorry.
Sorry, being so efficient, so
Okay.
I apologize. I just wanted to speak just briefly to your item on the one that's related to banning firearms in an establishment that serves liquor. And I just wanted to provide a little bit more rounded out reasoning here, really largely for the voters to make sure they know that this is going on the ballot, because as Councilor Bergman mentioned, the last time voters took action was over 10 years ago. And I've been meeting with various folks in the downtown, and we've been seeing what has been transpiring long before I became mayor, but we have a lot of issues that are complex, and this is one essential tool to be able to put online because this is an issue related to worker safety, not only the folks who are working downtown in these establishments, especially late at night when people's intoxication can likely grow, but also for the safety of our police officers and our customers as well who are downtown wanting to have a good night out. And we want to take this piece of it that really makes our community safety challenge that much more complex. We want to lessen and de-escalate what the possibilities can be for the wrong combination of things. I also just want to note that as I've been meeting with small businesses in particular, especially after what happened at the end of last summer related to Red Square, we want to make sure that we have consistent policies across businesses in downtown, that it is not depending on where you're going. I want to take the pressure off of small business for which they have to be individuals in choosing, do they allow guns or not, and then therefore be responsible for that enforcement. It's a power dynamic that no business owner should be put in, let alone their staff. And this will just, hopefully, start to change the culture and the vulnerable nature of when people's judgment, frankly, are impaired when they're intoxicated. It's just a really wrong combination. This is a chance for Burlington to weigh in again, to jumpstart our conversations in Montpelier at the State House, and to hopefully put some more momentum behind that statewide bill I mentioned, H45, that was introduced, so that Vermont can actually have a consistent policy outside of Burlington. But for the time being, Burlington should certainly start this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Does any other councilor wish to be heard on any one of these items? We will go to a vote then, again on the joint motion to waive the reading and adopt the resolutions posted under 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Councilor Bergman and folks in the City Attorney's Office for their work on those measures. We now move to item 8.5, a resolution, City Council commitment to rebuilding and reconciling with the Burlington Police Department. The main sponsor of this resolution is Councilor Shannon. And for a motion on the resolution, Councilor Shannon, I will turn to you.
Thank you, President Travers. I move to waive the reading and adopt the resolution and ask for the floor back after a second.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. To confirm, there are a couple versions of the resolution
Oh,
that are
I'm
posted
sorry.
online. If you could just clarify which version you are moving.
Yes, I am moving the version. It's in a different place here. My apologies.
There was an original version that starts with
It's the
2025.
updated resolution that
Okay.
I am moving.
All right, so there's a version of the resolution posted online that's 01/27/25, updated resolution, rebuilding, reconciling with police. And that's the version that you're moving, Councilor Shannon?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Councilor Litwin. Councilor Shannon, you did ask for the floor back, correct?
I did.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I want to note that this was first presented on our agenda at our last meeting, and it was my hope that we would have an opportunity to discuss the resolution publicly and then, possibly take the opportunity in another couple weeks anyway to revise the resolution. But we didn't get to it last time, and we have been able to have some back and forth between a variety of parties since that time, and there are some amendments which have resulted in the updated version. On September 9th, a resolution was introduced entitled Improving Recruitment for Emergency First Responders and Reexamining the Cap on the Number of Sworn Officers and Burlington Police Department Personnel. That resolution initially suggested an increase to our current cap on sworn officers of 87. Many councilors suggested we get more input, and we agreed on getting more analysis from the chief on what the cap should be, as well as several other items of concern relating to recruitment, retention, and rebuilding the department. The chief's report that was requested in that resolution has been presented, and the chief recommended in his report a cap of 105 sworn officers. The chief also noted the BPOA stated that removing the cap would signal to potential applicants that the city administration is committed to investing in the department and making it a better place to work. The CNA report recommended between 85 to 88 sworn officers based on 2019 data and excluded many calls for service by officers who are part of the headcount, and also not allowing for differential between actual officers and effective officers, which is the number of officers available to come to work. The difference between actual and effective officers has been as many as 11 officers. Bearing this in mind and other points laid out in the resolution, it is clear there is no magic number of sworn officers for this city, but what is clear is that by any calculation, we need far more than we have, and we should be signaling to recruits our intentions to rebuild this department in such a way that officers will feel safe, supported, and mentally and physically prepared for the challenges of their job, protecting our families and our community. To that end, this resolution recommends eliminating the cap on police officers, which will be determined annually by our budget and ability to recruit. There is no other department in the city that has this type of employee cap. In addition, our police department has lost much experience and expertise in recent years, and we need to recruit those officers who have the needed experience to BPD from other departments. The resolution recommends further review by the CAO to remove limitations hiring experienced officers known as laterals. The police department budget anticipated an ability to hire more sworn officers than we did hire, but it also underestimated overtime that we actually needed. So we are asking the CAO to review if there's money in our budget that might be used for more bonuses for retention and recruitment. The resolution also encourages initiatives to attract youth and immigrants to the profession of policing, asks for a progress report on the administration's efforts to address concerns with the BPD, the BPD building, hiring the chief, and notes that there are many more recommendations that require negotiations with BPOA, and that we commit to exploring those. The resolution was developed with input from the police union, representing rank and file officers, the police chief, as well as both Democratic and progressive colleagues. I want to just go through some of the changes that are in this updated version. most notable of which are there were several whereas clauses added because since this was presented last time, we had the incident of a man entering the police department with a hatchet, and there's been a request for fencing, and so that is reflected both in whereas clauses and resolved clauses. Also, we changed a number of dates at the request of the administration. There's one that I'm happy to change if the mayor wants to just explain why she needs more time to give us a report on the progress with some of the policing concerns, and I'm happy to entertain that. There's also 2 resolve clauses that have been added, one at the request that there be more reflection on our continued commitment to the racial justice resolution, which is also in there. And I'd just like to remind councilors that our recruits for this department are listening to our conversation. And I hope that that is truly the purpose of this, is to help us recruit. And I hope in our restatements, we reflect that desire to those who want to come work in this department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized? Mayor, could I go to you first?
Just on I think that was a question, Councilor Shannon? Yeah. Okay. So on, just to be clear, on line 128, at least of the version that I have, there was a date of February 10th, which will be your next council meeting, for a report from myself and my team on basically the status of the police station and what we were doing related to fencing, security, and just remodeling, as I mentioned before, my mayor's comments, as well as an update on the police chief hiring process. I would ask respectfully that you consider an amendment to February 18th. There's a lot that we're doing behind the scenes that we're not able to speak to in public session, and I hope that y'all understand that this is an important deliberative process to both find interim chiefs and to line up and find firms to help us. And if you can give us one more meeting, you'll have a more full and complete update, and it will probably be more satisfying than February 10th.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Shannon, the mayor can't make a motion to amend, but the floor is still yours.
Okay, thank you. I wondered if I could ask the mayor a quick question, which is simply if she is expecting that report to be given to us in an executive session.
Mayor.
I would imagine most of this would not need to be in executive session, but I'll have to get back to you based on where we are as we get closer to that particular meeting. We have released an RFQ, or about to, for the hiring firm for the police chief. That is a public notice. We've been engaging firms already, but in terms of, I would have to look back at the timeline because we're going to have a selection meeting before the 10th. I'm not sure we would make your posting deadline. As I mentioned before, meetings with Ernie Parmelo are underway. We need our clerk treasurer's office to have the time to actually put pieces together and work with his team. Again, I just want to emphasize that you're going to have a more satisfying update on the 18th. I think most of this would be able to be done in public session.
Okay. That is wonderful news, and I appreciate the clarification. And with that, I would be happy to make a friendly amendment, at least I hope it's friendly to our seconder, that we change the date on line 128 from February 10th to February 18th.
Okay. Councilor Shannon is moving to amend her underlying motion to amend line 128 to read February 18th instead of February 10th. Councilor Litwin is the seconder. Are you friendly to that amendment?
I am sorry, I'm not. I would like to ask us to consider amending it to include all of the items that would be public, but that we could keep to February 8th for an update on the police chief search. I think that's urgent enough to have an update sooner in executive session if that's necessary. Otherwise, I'm very happy to give the extra time for the other items.
Okay. Well, there is still a motion from Councilor Shannon to amend February 10th to February 18th. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilor Newbeeser. I am prepared to go to a vote on that amendment unless any councilor wishes to be recognized on the item. All right, then we will go to a vote The amendment is to line 128 of the resolution to require a report back from the mayor's office on February 18th as opposed to February 10th. Just before going to a vote, I will ask City Attorney Brown, do you need anything in writing on this after this, or is this something your office is tracking? Is it sort of simple enough that you'll have it if it is approved by the council? Or should I follow up with you in writing so that we know to amend the resolution?
No, we can track it.
Okay.
And make that change.
Okay, great. So we'll go to a vote on that amendment. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
That is 11 yes. I will note Councilor Litwin is the one no vote. So, oh, sorry, there's not 12 of us. 10. There are 11 of us. So 10 yeses, 1 no, with Councilor Litwin, the 1 no. Okay, Councilor Shannon, you did not want the floor any further, correct?
I think my.
I think your time is up, yep. Councilor Bergman.
Thank you. Sadly, we oppose this resolution on procedural and substantive grounds. We first need to reiterate that we greatly appreciate the work of the men and women of the BPD. They are working in very trying times with national problems like substance use, mental health crises, and an explosion of homeless people in our city center, and a concerning level of shoplifting and other crimes all happening at the same time. They are working with numbers well below the authorized cap, a very stressful environment. We have and will continue to work to both meet the target of 87 and to support a data-driven and supported assessment of the need for sworn officers. This resolution does neither. Once again, we were presented with a controversial and clearly divisive resolution last meeting without any attempt to work with us. Fortunately, the full agenda on January 13th forced the council to push the item to today. Our caucus reached out to the Democrats and tried to find common ground. Our proposals improved the resolution greatly, but we are sad to say that there were not enough changes for us to vote for it. This is disappointing to find ourselves in this place because we continue to want to work in good faith with our colleagues across the aisle and to take politics out of community safety to the greatest extent possible. We should try to have a unanimous or near unanimous support on a nonpartisan basis. Our most important objection involves the resolve clause that removes the cap. The resolution does not even call for an assessment of our needs. This does nothing to improve recruitment or retention or make our city safer. It is a performative distraction. The removal of a cap without a real assessment is not a meaningful policy initiative, especially when the current number is 64 and there is no likelihood of reaching the cap or the budgeted number this year anytime soon. Ironically, the action goes against the chief's own recommendation in his report when he says dispensing with the cap and merely expressing a target of having as many officers as the city can afford will be devastating to morale and will also fail to provide the necessary goals for rebuilding. Yet this is exactly what this resolution does. But it wouldn't be any better to call for the old cap of 105 like the chief did, because the chief's report also lacked an actual assessment of the need for officers, including an analysis of the specifics of Burlington beyond a partial recounting of history. We might be close to a consensus if the resolution didn't remove the cap but called for a real assessment on needs, including whether or not to have a cap at all. This option isn't even on the table despite the September resolution that committed us to fully considering any recommendations on the cap. This resolution bypasses that consideration. It does not ask a committee to consider it like we do with significant matters like climate change. It does not ask the mayor to analyze the need and report back. This is not the thoughtful and full consideration that we know, that I know councilors can and do on a regular basis. We tried, but failed also, to move on from the bickering over the bipartisan 9-3 June 20th resolution by including the full listing of the actions called for in it, in its context, and by reaffirming the many things in it that we believe the council continues to support, not the least of which is the investment in the full range of programs and people we need to overcome the issues of substance use, mental health, houselessness, poverty, and institutional racism that are causing us such grief in combination and individually. This was rejected by our colleagues. We also sought a fairer commentary on the CNA assessment in the whereas clauses, which call into question the validity of the cap. I have a list, but I will pass on that list. Perhaps Councillor Grant will speak to that. Our effort to correct the record was unsuccessful. Such cherry picking does not help us get to a non-politicized, honest appraisal. We are not happy in our opposition. There are items raised that we did reach significant, if not full, agreement on, including how to attract and retain lateral hires, a review of the current BPD budget, programs to hire youth and other persons, a report on the police facility, including the issue of fencing, and a commitment to look at longer-term measures to rebuild. But all of these items are ones that will be studied and reported back on, and then we can act substantively at a subsequent meeting. The one subsequent action is the one that is fatally flawed, and that is why we cannot vote in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bergman. Does any other councillor wish to be recognized on this matter? Councillor Grant, and then Councillor Newbeezer.
Thank you. I want to talk about a few things. First of all, I want to talk about resolutions because there was an incorrect post on Front Porch Forum that said progressives had not submitted or brought forth resolutions on community safety in like 4 years, something to that effect. I want to say a few things. I am very discouraged when it comes to resolutions because very often I feel, my personal opinion is like they're stunts. They are shiny little things meant to defer people's attention, and then we really don't follow up on them. And they don't always contain things that are fully correct. We do not need a resolution to discuss things. That we discuss things in council meetings, we discuss things in committees. It doesn't require a resolution. I had some serious misgivings with the whereas clauses around the CNA report, starting from line 17, going down to, looks like line 33. In a nutshell, there's an implication that CNA didn't take certain data into consideration. That we're implying this, or implying that they ignored something when we actually don't know if they got that data. I'd like to remind councilors who may not be aware, there were multiple extensions given to the police department because they were not responding to the documentation request. And in fact, in a letter September 21 of 21, Chief Murad, talking to CNA, said, "I wish to express the Burlington Police Department's appreciation for this robust draft report, a functional and operational assessment of the Burlington Police Department and its 151 recommendations. I also wish to express an apology for any materials that were not properly and promptly shared with CNA." So getting the documentation from BPD was a continual problem that we saw. And so this assumption that CNA left something out, we don't know that, and we don't have the time to investigate it in time for this meeting. I will say regarding lateral transfers, there have been discussions about lateral transfers for years. We just simply don't get the cooperation needed from the police department with regards to having a strategic recruitment plan for lateral transfers. Lateral transfers, we require digital advertising. We require a social media campaign to target them. We do not have that. This was brought up. There was an assumption that lateral transfers would just put in I don't even know how many applications, but there was a surprise expressed that the volume of lateral transfer applications that were expected after the last contract was approved And after the salary increases were approved, the applications that were expected did not materialize. Well, they did not materialize because we did not have an adequate recruitment plan targeting potential lateral transfers, similar to what the Burlington Fire Department did when they did their particular campaign to target lateral transfers. So, and in fact, Chief Murad chose to blame the police commission's work around oversight and accountability on the fact that there were not sufficient lateral transfers, which was an outrageous claim that the police commission pushed back on. Our council commitment, we can commit all we want. It doesn't mean a thing if we don't have a partner in the department, and that has been a major issue. Recruitment and retention, there is no plan. So when we say we're struggling with recruitment, we don't really have a plan to struggle with. That has been brought up numerous times. I will again say everyone needs to read the BPOA internal survey. We need to hear from the officers. I have been going through categorizing wellness. Their concerns about the lack of recruitment and their concerns about the lack of a retention plan. Issues around the building, which the mayor has addressed, internal environment that's not the building. This has to do with leadership, with supervisors, with the standards in the department. Very, very important information. So I will say that Councilor Bergman, everything he said, I agree with. And I just don't think this is something that's going to be effective because it's not really addressing the issues that we have that are the core of why we are where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. I only have one other councilor in the queue at the moment, and that is Councilor Newbeezer. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be? Okay, then we'll go to Councilor Barlow. Councilor Newbeezer.
Thank you, Council President. Let me just start by saying that I agree with much, if not all, the statement that Councilor Bergman read on behalf of the Progressive Caucus. When I knocked every door twice, residents in Ward 1 expressed exhaustion at the bickering about an seemingly endless relitigation of a bipartisan 9-3 resolution from 5 years ago, which was and still is, unfortunately, the essence of this resolution. Like the mayor, the council must focus on the complexity of public safety. Police officer headcount, effective mental health services, drug dependence, sheltering the folks without homes, expanding out-of-school programming for our kids, and much, much more are incredibly important to this work. Yes, we must support our rank-and-file police officers, and we must also support EMTs and crisis street workers and social workers and firefighters and healthcare providers who are all on the front lines. It is a balance, and we do not have endless resources to do all of that work. We must all listen to the needs and concerns of rank-and-file officers and support the mayor in recruiting creative, effective, and 21st century leadership for the police department. I am deeply grateful that we have the seasoned experience of Ingrid Jonas at the table, the mayor's senior advisor on community safety, to lead the search for a new police chief. Let me also say, I will not forget and I will not mention the conditions that gave rise to that resolution 5 years ago. A series of situations where police used excessive force. Some of the folks affected were residents of my ward. A failure of the prior administration to speak to the community with candor about those assaults and transparency. Very expensive settlements paid to victims by the city. The resulting lack of community confidence in the police department leadership, and breakdown of communication between the chief and various important populations within our city. And now, hardworking rank-and-file officers to this day are left with that lack of community support. With all that said, I want to reassure my constituents and Burlingtonians across the city that we are arriving at a new day for our city when it comes to this conversation. We have leadership in the mayor's office, and we have new leadership, I should say, in the mayor's office, and we will have new leadership in our police department. I ask and I hope that all of us on this council will join together in looking forward, not backward, forward, and support that new leadership in tackling the complicated challenges of community safety we are all dealing with and that affect all of our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. We'll go to Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Travers. I didn't prepare any remarks like my colleagues, but one of the things we've heard over and over again is that, and we see it in the exit interview data, is that there is a perception that the police department is not supported by city government. And this may be somewhat symbolic because we haven't been able to hire, and we don't have the applicants right now. But no other department has a politically imposed hiring limit like the one we currently have in place on BPD. And so I'm interested in removing obstacles to recruitment. And we've been told this is an obstacle to recruitment. There are others. This isn't the only one. But it seems very simple to me that if we remove this, it's a gesture, and it may actually unlock our ability to attract more lateral hires and new recruits who may think they're limited by the hobbled number of resources that we have, this 87, that doesn't allow us to create an organization that can carry out all the things we've asked it to do. So I think this is very simple. It does not dismantle any of the other provisions in the resolution that was passed back in June of 2020. It just allows us to move forward with this, the new sort of ground truth that we know that one action in the resolution ended up setting us on the course we're on now, where we have so few in the department to do all of what we're asking it to do. So I wholeheartedly support this resolution, and I hope it does help us to rebuild the police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. I will note we have about 3 minutes left on this item. Councilor McKnight, I have you in the queue. If we reach time on it, then we will be done with councilor comments, but I will give the mayor an opportunity to speak. If there's still time, then we'll see if there's time for any other councilor. But Councilor McKnight, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will be pretty quick. I agree with Councilor Barlow. Personally, I'm very proud and fully supportive of this resolution. Once again, I'm here to do everything we can to rebuild our police department. And tonight, I feel like we're bringing forward something that is truly directly responsive to what officers at the Burlington Police Department and the chief are asking us to do. I'm really glad that we were able to work directly with them as a team, and that they know now that the majority of counselors at this table truly want them to thrive. And when I was out knocking doors this weekend, Councilor Newbeezer, you beat me to that topic, in Ward 8 actually, every single person that I spoke to asked, why can't we hire more police officers? We need more police officers. Can you please help us get more police officers? They don't need us to agree on every little detail, but the people of the city are desperate for us to make some forward momentum on this topic, and I'm glad that we'll be able to do that tonight. As for the idea that our ability to make resolutions at this table is a stunt, I mean, to me, that's a big wow. Making resolutions is if not the primary mechanism for change that we have here as elected officials. And the suggestion that we not use every opportunity and every tool we have in our tool belt to make progress on the very serious issues facing the city is to suggest that we be negligent in our duties, which I firmly reject. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. We only have 1 minute left on the item. Councillor Kane, can you keep it to a minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I had actually entered the queue after Councillor.
Sorry, I didn't have you in the queue, Councillor Litwin. I think we'll give Councillor Kane an opportunity, and then we'll go to the mayor. Apologies.
I'll try to be very brief. Maybe you'll be able to jump in as well. So just on the topic of supporting officers, I think one way to do that is to help them avoid stress related to lawsuits, which comes with doing work that is responding to incidents that's inappropriate for sworn officers to be responding to. The institution of policing swelled to respond to all sorts of social ills, including issues that sworn officers do not have the training to deal with. And so, I think it's very important for us to have a cap that just pushes us to be intentional about, making sure that we are, supporting sworn officers by, taking tasks that are inappropriate from them, given the fact that, their training is fairly narrow. So I just wanted to make that point in relation to supporting officers. I know everyone at this table wants to support officers, and I just thought that might help clarify why this is the one department with a staffing cap. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. Councillor Litwin was the only other councillor that was wishing to speak on this item. Can I get a sense as to whether or not there was any other councillor that was wishing to get in the queue? Councillor Litwin, would you be able to keep your comments to just a minute as well? I apologize, I didn't have you in the queue, so.
I understand the misunderstanding because I was trying to get attention for both Councillor McKnight and myself. So just really quickly, I guess I would just say some of the comments that I've heard tonight are contradictory. On one hand, I hear that we want to rebuild our police department while simultaneously we are critiquing and attacking the police department leadership, as we heard on December 9th. And so it certainly, as Councillor Shannon said then, does nothing to uplift this department. So for me, this resolution is not designed to dwell on the past, but is actually designed to move forward. It is a bridge building initiative. It is what the police department has asked for on multiple occasions. And the cap is the budget. The budget is the cap. The mayor creates the budget, and this body approves the budget. So I wholeheartedly support removing the cap and continuing the conversation about how many officers we need. And it's absolutely right. It's not just in Ward 8, it's in Ward 7. We consistently hear we need more officers. That is the priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Litwin. So, Mayor, we'll give you the floor here, and then we will go to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. While I appreciate the updates that have been made to the resolution since your last meeting, I remain very concerned about setting policy that lifts the cap. And frankly, it's because it's premature. It's a premature attempt to make policy when we cannot even reach the staffing numbers we put into this current fiscal year, which is 77. And I think you all are very well aware of that. Our focus should continue to be, or your focus as the legislative body, and then when it comes to me as the mayor to consider to assign or not, it should be focused on evidence-based rebuilding strategies that have been vetted, that we look to peer cities, that we look beyond ourselves to know what actually works and is worth our money, our taxpayers' money. And especially for a city like Burlington, with all the complexities that we're facing and our limitations and our issues of keeping our city affordable. Our community desperately needs well-vetted positions, especially on community safety, and especially ones that we can actually implement. I think we've all been living in the last 4 years of understanding when it's hard, when you have great intentions, but then you can't implement something as quickly as possible. It overpromises what we're able to do for the rank and file, and I am being very diligent in making sure that we're being responsible as we build budgets. Budgets are ultimately the biggest action of policy, and I, as mayor, will continue to present responsible budgets that are fiscally affordable for our city and align with strategies that work and the values of our community. That's what I did in fiscal year 26 with the addition of 10 more officers from where we started when I became mayor. Plus, and most importantly, looking at the work of this council in a bipartisan effort in 2020, related to what this community was asking this city leadership to do, which is to think more expansively on community safety, and most importantly, understand racial justice commitments. Most importantly, understand racial justice commitments. And that, I am glad that that was at least somewhat acknowledged in this resolution, but one of the most important things as policymakers is to make sure we build off those who come before us, understand our history, but have that forward-looking mentality of policy that we can implement, that's strategy and evidence-based, and things that we can actually afford and deliver on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We will then go to a vote on Councillor Shannon's motion on item 8.5. And as I'm expecting a divided vote on this matter, I will ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Councillor Barlow?
Yes.
Councillor Bergman?
No.
Councillor Broderick?
No.
Councillor Carpenter?
Yes.
Councillor Grant?
No.
Councillor Kane?
No.
Councillor Litwin?
Yes.
Councillor McKnight?
Yes.
Councillor Newbeezer?
Almost messed it up. No.
Councillor Shannon?
Yes.
City Council President Travers?
Yes.
6 ayes, 5 nays.
With 6 yes and 5 no, the motion carries. Thank you, Councillor Shannon. That now brings us to item 8.6. We have here with us, and thanks for their patience, the chair of the Burlington School Board, Claire Wool, as well as the Executive Director of Finance for the Burlington School District, Nathan Lavery. And they are here to provide us a update with respect to the anticipated school budget to appear on our town meeting day ballot. And whenever you're ready, you may proceed. Chair Wool, I'm sorry, could you pull that microphone? I want to make sure the one in front of you is, it might be just that microphone.
Just this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, hello, good evening. Oh, yeah, much better. Thank you. Hello, Mayor again, city officials, as well as city councilor. I'm here, unfortunately, Superintendent Tom Flanagan is sick and could not be with us tonight. But thank you for the opportunity each year to come and discuss with you our proposed budget that will be on the ballot in March. And thank you for affording us the opportunity to come at the beginning of the month to talk to you, which provided any opportunity for city councilors to reach out to us over the last couple weeks. So we appreciate that time and being on that agenda. So tonight, I'm here with Executive Director Nathan Lavery. This is my 8th budget as chair, coming to you to present where we are and where we stand, and look forward to answering any questions you might have. But thank you for the opportunity again.
Thanks, Chair Wool. Good evening, everyone. So you have all had the slideshow, I believe, that we are going to run through tonight in brief. I will just focus on a few of the highlights, and I'll point to one important difference in the slideshow versus what we're actually going to see on the ballot. But having said that, the real highlight for our fiscal year 26 budget is that we're projecting that it will decrease education tax, property taxes by 4% across the city, which is really great news. That is a combination of a lot of different factors. Folks familiar with the education funding system in Vermont know it's complex to begin with, and there are certainly some of those complexities at play in that number, but I think the point that we really want to take a moment to celebrate, emphasize and celebrate really, is the great work that our community in the form of our school board and allies here, but with support building across the state, really led to change the weighted pupil funding formula in Vermont. Those changes went into effect last year. We didn't kind of feel it as much as we're feeling it this year, in part because last year was also the first year we were voting on a budget where we would start repaying debt associated with the high school construction that's going on. This year, we are fully experiencing the benefit of that. It was ultimately a change in the financing formula that increase the recognition that there are communities in the state that have students who have real needs that need to be met through their participation in our schools, and the funding model now much more kind of accurately reflects that. We have weights that are based on empirically derived assessment of those needs. So that's really exciting. I do want to throw up the caution flag at the same time and say that there are definitely improvements that the state is going to be looking at to the education financing formula during this legislative session. And we want improvement, but we also don't want to lose the hard-fought gains that we have only recently achieved. And so I think that's just something for us all to kind of keep our antennas up and be paying attention to. There's a long way from beginning of the session policy speeches to actual legislation, but it's something that we want to be incredibly mindful of. So that's one of the big drivers of the tax rate decrease, as well as just the district's practice over a number of years since Superintendent Flanagan arrived and at the direction of the board developed a more transparent and equitable budgeting model that we've put in place. One of the things that does every year is kind of force us to grapple with how our enrollment's changing, and provides us an opportunity to align our staffing to that enrollment change, which is something that we have been doing year after year now for a number of years. I think that's one of the reasons why we're in a position where we can simultaneously deliver to our community a budget that's projected to decrease taxes without making significant staffing reductions. I think what you will ultimately see are some other places in our broader geographic neighborhood where there are reductions in the budget, but they come through in part through significant changes in staffing and programming. We've not had to do that here. So I think that's a real testament to the leadership from the board, the superintendent, and again, everyone who joined in that campaign to ensure that our students get the resources they need and deserve. Along with the change in the education property tax rate, there's also a reduction in the rate for those who pay, again, income adjustment on their property taxes. So that is easy to forget, but those folks do benefit not only from the fact that they are paying an income adjusted amount, but they also benefit from the fact that when property taxes go down, that original bill from which an adjustment needs to occur is less. So they're getting that. And we have some slides in the presentation that speak to the kind of some hypothetical impacts in those cases. A couple things I do want to say, even though we're projecting a decrease in the tax rate, that doesn't mean we're spending less money, right? We're facing the same type of financial headwinds that every school district and probably every municipality across the state are facing in the form of rising wages, healthcare costs, and so forth. And of course we have, as you all understand and you see, hopefully when you go by, drive down North Avenue, we have debt that we're paying associated with the high school and tech center that's currently under construction. So those are all factors that kind of force us from year to year to increase the amount we're spending. And we're doing that against a backdrop of declining, albeit not dramatically, but declining enrollment at the same time. So it's always forcing us to look again and again at what we're spending and where we're putting those resources. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the background, but I do just want to give a nod to the fact that there is a slide here that talks about our equitable budgeting model and talks about kind of different components of that model at a high level, including our RISE allocation, which is something that we think is really important. It gives money to schools on a weighted pupil basis that uses the same type of, effectively the same weights that are in state law, and that provides schools, we kind of believe philosophically in kind of pushing as much money as we can down to a level where the decision makers are as close to students as possible, and that gives principals and their school advisory groups the opportunity to deploy those funds in a way that best serves the needs of their individual school. So on the one hand, we do have some kind of one-size-fits-all elements to our model that ensures that every school has a core level of staffing and resources that we think is necessary, and then we provide some flexibility on top of that for creative investments to better meet the needs of each unique school population. I'm going to jump ahead in the slideshow a little bit, if you are following along, to probably the slide that's the most complex, but also perhaps the most comprehensive.
And Nathan, sorry to interrupt you, but would you like us to share this on the screen for folks?
If it's helpful, you certainly can.
Okay, I may do that. Could you direct us to which slide you're on at the moment?
It's on slide 9, which is called Budget and Tax History.
Here we are. Great.
Yeah, so.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So a couple things I just wanted to highlight here because I think they're easy to confuse or not clearly understand. But you'll see in green, there's two boxes highlighted, the education fund spending and the property tax impact. Those are highlighted. Obviously, the property tax impact is really the easiest way to conceptualize the impact of any budget that we're presenting. The education fund spending is the portion of our budget that we get from the state's education fund, and the largest source of revenue into the state's education fund are education property taxes. So that's why we highlighted that number. We have an overall budget that exceeds just our education fund spending, and that's in part because we get significant federal money through a variety of federal programs, as well as some other non-federal monies that make up our other funds, including things like after-school participation revenue or technical center tuition revenue and so forth. So you'll see those numbers on there. We made an effort this year to recalibrate our overall budget number. It didn't make any substantive change to what we're spending or what we're spending it on, but rather we wanted to better align with how we're seeing the Agency of Education publish budget numbers for communities. They historically haven't done much of that. They've started doing some of that more recently. And when they sent us numbers and said, hey, we want to run with these numbers, we said, where'd those numbers come from? We can't tie them out, so we're working with them to better understand the methodology that they use. It might sound easy to compare two sets of budget numbers and think they should always match, but there are a lot of things that you can choose to include or exclude when you calculate those numbers, and so we're working towards something that better aligns with how the Agency of Education reports it. So that's a technical detail, but I think it's important because it does change the numbers that ultimately appear on the ballot. Again, it's not a substantive change in what we're doing or tax impacts or anything like that, but it is a change. The next slide shows the breakdown of what's driving increases in our education spending. And here you can see, I think in a useful visual, just how much of it is wages and benefits, and of course, the debt service component. I'll skip ahead a couple slides if you don't mind. Perfect. There's a couple slides here that show the hypothetical impact on different ratepayer or different taxpayers. In this case, we used a couple home values for hypothetical property taxpayers, and you can see reductions in both of these situations. This is essentially proportional, so you can kind of run the number and apply the 4% reduction, to really any number, any home house site value. If you go to the next slide, this is where it gets a little more complicated because the important thing to remember about the income adjustment is it is using information from the prior year, your prior year tax bill and your prior year income and comparing it to your current year tax bill and your current year income, which is ultimately to say it's complicated, but there will be reductions. These hypotheticals here, it's not as easy to draw a straight line and figure it out, but there are calculators online that can be used to estimate this, and the tax department typically publishes an estimator later in the calendar year. Okay, the last slide I want to talk about, and I'll skip ahead to the end of just about the end of the presentation, is slide 21. A couple more, please. Oh, perfect, back one. Perfect, ballot language. The one thing I want to point out here that's different from this presentation on the screen and what you all were sent before is that on the advice of our legal counsel, we have to remove the sentence in bold at the bottom. The state law around what the ballot language has to say was changed slightly when it was reinstituted last year, and the change ultimately removed like the word substantially similar, or the phrase substantially similar from the law, meaning that we no longer have any kind of wiggle room in terms of how we present the ballot question, which means that we're not allowed to talk about the tax rate impact, which typically we've done. Obviously, that's challenging because, number one, it's a strong selling point for the budget, and two, as I said before, it's really the way that most people that I've encountered at least tend to be able to put the budget ask in perspective for them. So part of our ask here tonight of you all would be, certainly as you're out talking to your constituents, to be able to understand and with confidence give them a sense of what the impact really could mean for them, including kind of emphasizing that it is a budget that is projected to decrease taxes based on everything that we know right now. because that won't be as apparent on the ballot as we would have liked it to be. Yeah, based on Vermont law, exactly. So I think we can leave it there. We've got plenty of time, it looks like, for questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation and for your work as always. Always appreciate having you here at City Hall. I will turn to any counselors who wish to speak on this item. Any counselor wish to get in the queue? Counselor Bergman.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, people are talking about affordability. To come in with a decrease at a time where you're not sacrificing students or teachers or other personnel there, you're not disinvesting in the infrastructure, that's really impressive. And thank you.
Thank you. One other point I'll just make to that score is the one thing area where we did invest more money than we kind of originally set out to, as we better understood the budget landscape, is into some money for our infrastructure improvements. We know with respect to our relationship with the city and the city's debt, like, we're not planning to come and ask the city for more bonding capacity, but we still have infrastructure needs. We have some hope that there could be a statewide solution to that at some point, but people have said that longer than I've been doing this job. So we're also, putting some of the money that we can afford to put into that in the budget. And one of the nice things about that, again, is if we're back here next year and the financial conditions are more challenging for us, and we need to look for places to reduce without, again, impacting programming and staffing and so forth, we have that option to kind of step back from that to a degree. And so we have some flexibility built in.
Thank you. Councilor Shannon, and then Councilor Litwin. Oh, and then, do you want in the queue as well, Councilor Litwin? Yes. Okay. Don't want to confuse it again. All right. Understood. Councilor Shannon, Litwin, and then Barlow.
I just want to thank you for your amazing work, and I do appreciate that the tax decrease this year is due to the work from years prior and school boards prior who worked incredibly hard to organize in Montpelier to make sure that Burlington students got their fair share that they had been denied for 25, 30 years. And we've paid the price for that, but now we're getting the benefit of a lot of hard work. And thank you, Claire, for your leadership. And I was really surprised recently driving down North Avenue to see how far along the new high school is, and it is so exciting. And I think that we are a community that is craving good news, and that looks both the school budget and seeing this kind of progress is really great news for our city. So thank you both for all you've done to make this happen and for your long time work on all these really tough issues.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Litwin.
Thank you. For brevity's sake, I'll just reiterate, thank you, Councilor Bergman and Councilor Shannon, for those comments. I wholeheartedly agree with them and the hard work that the board and you all do, and how exciting it is for our city to see a negative number next to the tax increase. We so rarely see that. My comments are are a little bit different. They are related to the finances, and I don't think this will be a surprise to you, Ms. Lavery, but I have concerns about the banking relationship that the school district has with TD Bank, and I would ask that, as your own governing body, that you consider looking at your RFP process and looking at how you want to select the bank that serves you. So you have a checking account approaching nearly $60 million and another 2 accounts in bonding that are approaching $100 million of assets. And I think it's hopefully not news to most of the people around this table that TD Bank was found responsible and agreed to pay over $138 billion in penalties to the Justice Department investigations in violation of the Bank Secrecy Act. They pled guilty to conspiring to fail to maintain an anti-money laundering program. They are the largest bank in U.S. history to plead guilty to BSA program failures and the first U.S. bank in history to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit money laundering. The failures enabled 3 money laundering networks to collectively transfer over $670 million through TD Bank accounts between 2019 and 2023. And one money laundering network processed more than $470 million through the bank between January 2018 and February 2021. There were several schemes involved here, including hundreds of millions of dollars put into shell accounts before TD Bank reported the activity, and including employees who conspired with a network to quickly deposit funds in the US and withdraw those funds in Colombia to launder approximately another $39 million. So as I think about the public good, and as I think about the school budget representing a substantial portion of the city's budget, I ask us to think, I invite us to think about the ethical implications of banking with banks that have been found guilty and admitted to these types of crimes. I remain open to the fact that I could be wrong about a detail or two. And so I just would encourage the board and yourself, Mr. Lavery, to consider what aspects guide our RFP processes, and fully understanding that we need large capacity banks that can operationalize hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions. So I'm happy to let you respond, but I just wanted to share that with you today in the public space.
Sorry. Thank you, Councilor Litwin. I suspect you may want an opportunity to respond, but I am mindful of the fact we have a minute left on this item. I have Councilor Barlow and the mayor. Are there any other councilors that wish to be recognized on this item? Councilor McKnight. Okay. We're going to give them an opportunity to respond. Councilor Barlow, Councilor McKnight, if you could just perhaps take 1 minute each. Is that possible? Okay. Okay, and then we'll give Councilor Newbeazer a minute as well, and then we'll go to you, Mayor. So thank you, Director Lavery.
Sure, yeah, I don't need to be at length, but again, it's something that we've been in communication on, and it's appreciating, the perspective there is something that we're definitely willing to consider on. We haven't gone out to solicit new banking services recently, but, I think it's definitely within the purview of the board to set some standards the next time we do, and consider kind of how they want to capture some of those elements in terms of like the bank's past reputation and actions and so forth when kind of scoring respondents. So it's certainly within our realm to consider, and something that we'll discuss at the time we take it up.
Thank you. We're going to go to Councilors Barlow, McKnight, and Newbeazer. Try to keep it to a minute each, and then we'll go to the mayor. So Councilor Barlow.
Okay, thank you. I think I can do it in a minute. I just wanted to join the other councilors in thanking you for this good news in a year when we're going to have our own significant budget challenges. But I also wanted to recognize what I know this has been, your ability to manage the Burlington School District's budget, where you're basically running surpluses for the last at least 10 years, is extraordinary, given the place it came from, where in 7 of the prior years to you coming on, I know, Nathan, they had run deficits 7 of the 10 years prior that totaled over $13 million. So there was a lot of really difficult, challenging work that was done in the school district, probably back around 2015, that laid a lot of the groundwork for a lot of the success you've had in running reasonable budgets, in this case, a great budget this year, but and being able to manage those in a way where you have fund balances every year. So I totally appreciate the work that you've done at the district. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor McKnight and Councilor Newbeazer.
Thank you, President Travers, and thank you for that great presentation. Echoing the thanks of the others around this table, this is just extraordinary work. I'm a big fan of the school district. My kids love going to school there, and I just wanted to point out, I think since we have so few chances to be together, I think it's important to do some dot connecting for the public when we have the opportunity. And so I was just taking some time to reflect on the enrollment history slide, and seeing that, enrollment overall is trending down, right? And so to me, the first thing I think is, I'm guessing that is to some extent driven by the difficulty of securing affordable housing here and, the kind of double-edged sword that we have in Burlington where wages don't keep up at pace with the cost of living. And so I just thought I should point out that if we at this table and in collaboration with the mayor's administration can make progress on things like housing, on things like improving the economy, making Burlington an attractive place for young people to come and live and work and for businesses to set up shop, we could potentially start to see our enrollment numbers go up, and then the tax burden is spread out and smaller for each individual person. And so I just think that's important to hold in mind as we do all the important work that we're doing here. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Councilor Newbeezer?
Sorry to be repetitive, but I just wanted to thank you both for the work, and it is really relieving as a homeowner to see property taxes potentially going down by 4%. I feel like, talking with our school board representative over in Ward 1, Gary, the thoughtfulness and the hard work to sort of get where we are is noted, and I appreciate it, and I would be remiss not to shout out my fellow Ward 1 resident who is here tonight as well, who is also on the school board, Kathy Alwell, who really championed during her time on the school board the pupil funding formula that is resulting in this 4% tax increase, as I know you all did as well. So thank you both, and I couldn't mention my fellow Ward 1 resident. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. We'll go to the mayor, and then happy for any parting words that either Chair Wool, Director Lavery, you have. Mayor?
Thank you. As I mentioned before, I really appreciate how we've been really collaborative. I wanted to mention two quick things. I really appreciate that you talked about the equity-based budgeting practices BSD has been involved in for a while now. And just to mention, I mentioned earlier my mayor's comments around ways we're finding ways to collaborate. As a practice I want to bring into the municipal side of the budget and really learn from our school partners around how you took that lens and how you took that approach to where you prioritize funding within our school system. I think the same is very much owed to our municipal side of the budget, so that our priorities and also understanding impact and disparate impact in particular is really understood in how we spend our other resources as a community. I wanted to offer another moment in real-time collaboration. We were just having a meeting today around town meeting day and how we can leverage the fact that we mail ballots to all voters, and understanding now the state law changed to your ballot language for which you're able to use or not use on the ballot. We will be doing some level of educational insert, if you will, much like how the Secretary of State did for the November election, and happy to incorporate what might be useful so that you can have that same level of education, maybe even a little more. So our CAO will be in touch with collaboration there because I think more education is better, and we can also explore maybe language access, because part of what we were also planning is using enough plain language to make it easy to adapt to translation, and we can maybe collaborate there as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Any parting words before we head off to town meeting day, Chair Wool, Director Lavery? Yes.
In the governor's address as well, he mentioned tinkering with formulas. Act 127 is not tinkering with formulas. We finally have a weighted pupil formula in this state that we can defend. Prior to that, it was not defensible. So it is critically important in our second year of having weighted pupil, long-term weighted pupil formula that impacts rural and communities like ours and Winooski to finally be in effect. And so through this time period where the topic of conversation and public education funding is on the forefront, it is critically important that if you are not familiar with Act 127 or the work that we've done, Commissioner Alwell has done, and really not just Burlington, but across the state, we championed reform 7 years in the making. Since 2019, the Agency of Education had requested a review of the weighted pupils for the state of Vermont. And so this, I commend Executive Director Lavery, Superintendent Flanagan, the board for our fiscal responsibility, but this act and these weighted pupils are extremely important to this budget and delivering this budget this year as well. And for the fact that we cannot thank Burlingtonians enough for last year's budget and the increase in the impact, being the only school district in the state that had a campus full closure and rebuild. And it fell on the shoulders of all Burlingtonians. And that the state did provide us with $16 million in a surplus from the Ed Fund, one time, for just cleanup. So again, we cannot thank the Burlington voters enough for managing in their own world their taxes last year and voting and supporting us, because the education of passing a bond is just the authority to borrow. And with every budget that we present taxpayers, we're presenting that bond each year until it's paid in full. So we pass a bond with the authority to borrow, and a lot of people didn't realize that we pass the bond, go ahead, but each year it impacts our budget, unlike other school districts in the state. And hopefully with this success, and thank you so much for acknowledging the investment in our BHS and BTC campus, we will then finally be able to relieve academic dollars that are going in the millions to the rent at Macy's and to other properties that we've had to endure over 5 years because of being displaced without a school and a campus. So much gratitude for your gratitude and appreciation, and to again share our deep appreciation that we are frugal and want the best. We want to make Burlington affordable. We're thrilled with the housing that's being built. We look for those enrollment numbers to increase based on all that housing, and we see it and we feel it and we are excited. And our drop in enrollment is not as substantial as other areas throughout the state, so we feel very fortunate with that. And we have used those federal dollars to invest in IAA in our high school campus and throughout our entire school district systematically. And what Executive Director Lavery shared about the 600 that we have included, because it's still in its 14th year moratorium of no construction aid in the state of Vermont for school districts. So we do have to safeguard our operating structures, schools, for safety of boilers, heat, water, all those things that we know, make up a healthy district and providing finances to afford maintenance and upkeep. So sorry to be long-winded, but just wanted to share with you how we got here as well, because we couldn't do it without your support of the bond and all that. And so it's teamwork for sure. So thank you again.
Not long-winded, points well taken. Thanks again to you, Chair Wool, Executive Director Lavery. Thanks and gratitude and well wishes to Superintendent Flanagan as well. I appreciate our ongoing collaboration, and we'll look forward in the next council and school board year, perhaps to explore another joint meeting between our bodies here. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Item 8.7 was an FY26 city budget presentation. In order to focus tonight's agenda on the next three items, which are the proposed bonds, in collaboration with the Mayor's Administration, we have put off the FY26 city budget presentation until our meeting on February 10th, which was accomplished by adopting our agenda. So that then takes us to item 8.8, a resolution, March 4th, 2025, annual city meeting issuance of revenue bonds for wastewater and stormwater utility projects. That's also followed by 8.9, revenue bonds for drinking water utility projects. We have DPW Director Chapin Spencer and Water Resources Director Megan Moyer here. And I'm anticipating that we will be able to speak to both of these items in your presentation. Is that right? Okay, great.
That is correct.
So we'd be happy to turn the floor over to you, and then we'll open the floor to questions and feedback from the council.
And Chapin, I'm going to start.
Aha.
Because I'm going to contextualize it all three all together. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So in the context of these next three items that you have, as you know, you have three bonds in front of you, and these three bonds will help advance the three major priorities for this community over the next couple years, which of course you've heard me say before, are community safety, making sure we have ample and affordable housing on hand, and making sure that we have a climate resiliency strategy that looks at adaptation and mitigation work. And so when we look at what that means in terms of these bonds that you'll hear a brief high-level presentation on to remind you of where we've brought you on this journey over the last couple of months. Under community safety, you'll see within the GO bond, strategic investments in our fleet that we've put offline for a couple of years. That's critical for fire trucks, police cruisers, snow plows, the ability for our fire department to actually have water in those hoses to put out fires, for example. And that means replacing 30% of our aging fleet. You've heard Ashley Parker speak to that. Community safety also means making sure we have the resources necessary for traffic calming. You've heard in that presentation as well that we will be able to advance about 75% of the requests from the community to slow people down, to make it safer for pedestrians and bikers alike to be on our streets. To housing, there is an estimated number of almost 5,000 units that we will hopefully have online over the next several years in Burlington. And we need to be able to be ready to plug those people in, essentially, those units to be part of our housing stock here. And we do not have the capacity at this moment to be able to grow to those certain numbers. And to climate, we need to always constantly think about the health of the lake, not only for water access during hot months, but just doing our due diligence in part for the lake that has many communities all around it, as well as looking at just our strategic investments in the 19 or so city buildings that we own to make sure we're doing energy efficiencies and making sure eventually we're saving the money of taxpayers by doing strategic investments that we know are not only climate friendly, but economically friendly as well. These bonds also advance the livability of the city in general. This is about affordability. You see this in the lake water bonds. I'm sure they'll go over around the affordability program that we not only have now, but we are continuing to improve upon. It's about making equity-based decisions in our infrastructure, including advancing an equity index project that planning and REIB are working on, and parts of DPW have already started to implement around deciding where we do our sidewalk repair. This is coupled with the fact that we've worked diligently as administration to be very mindful about what other questions we are putting on the ballot in March, and this includes no general rate tax increase. That's no small task. We're trying to and actively showing how we're thinking about affordability and having that front of mind so that we know these are big investments we're asking that can advance some very big priorities in this community, but we're keeping affordability top of mind. Finally, these bonds have been diligently developed after deep analysis of our needs, our deferred maintenance, and the expense of when we fix things. And we all know, you've heard me talk a lot about my rotting porch on my house, but things get more expensive when you continue to defer maintenance. So it is part of our responsibility as stewards of our city today to make sure we start putting responsible investments back into our city. This is how we will thrive. This is how we will flourish as a community. And I want to now hand it over to our hardworking city employees who've spent a lot of time and effort going all over this community to multiple MPAs and everything else to really bring you their best thinking on what we desperately need, as well as how we're going to get there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, for that context. It is important to look at the top line goals of our community and how we can achieve those, and I appreciate you drawing attention to that. I also want to thank the council for your partnership over the last 4 months in taking a number of steps with us. Your overall focus and questions have revised this proposal. Your participation on many of our tours at our wastewater plant was appreciated. Your communication to key constituents across your districts has been helpful for getting feedback to us and helping us communicate directly with our residents and ratepayers. And lastly, most importantly, is really your insights and how best to bring this forward. We have benefited from your direction on phasing, as you'll see in the summary presentation from Megan momentarily, the affordability strategies in our upcoming second turn of the wheel, and just as recently as a few days ago, really the future checkpoints that we have added into the resolution in front of you tonight, and the additional third-party review that we believe, as I think you do as well, that these checkpoints are not only important for us to deliver the most effective and cost-effective project we can, but build the trust within our community as we take this journey together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan, who's going to summarize the key points of our journey together and really put a fine point on how we're going to walk together moving forward to deliver this successfully.
Thank you, Chapin, and thank you all for all of the time you've already spent.
I'm sorry, Director Moyer, I don't know what that microphone.
Just a fake mic?
Apparently it's a prop mic, I don't know. So there's just one that works.
Is this better? Yes.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Close. Okay. Thank you, Chapin, and thank you all for both the AV work and for all the time that you've spent listening to me talk about the needs and the money and so on and so forth. We started this journey together in November. We knew that this was a big ask of the community and that we needed to get out early and often to make sure that everybody was aware and that, I guess, regardless of whether or not we agree about the bond, that we could agree on the need. At the heart of this proposal is the need to replace aged infrastructure that is truly at significant risk of failure, to make sure that we have sufficient capacity to support the housing that we certainly hope is going to be coming to our doors, to ensure that we are continuing to protect the lake against climate change, and to protect our workers with important safety and code upgrades. On the beach side, on the water quality side, a key portion of this proposal is to implement tertiary phosphorus removal at our largest treatment plant, which will meet our full obligations as a city to the Lake Champlain cleanup plan. We also have funds in the proposal to continue work on reducing combined sewer overflows. When we've met with the community, when we've met with all of you, and we can certainly discuss this further, it does seem that the community gets that this is an important need. We haven't spent a lot of time needing to argue with people about the importance of these investments. And from that, we've been able to focus our work on right-sizing this ask for Burlington today. So when we came to you in November 2024, we came with some pretty large numbers. 21 million on the drinking water side and a total of 218 million on the wastewater and stormwater side. We took that number and continued to modify it with some more recent modifications, and we've visited anybody and everybody who would listen, from neighborhood planning assemblies, wastewater treatment plant tours, DPW Commission 2, City Council, the town hall meeting, print, social media, everything. And our work, should this item go on the ballot, is certainly not done. We have lots more things planned in the future. But throughout that community engagement and engagement of you all, we heard that the number was a bit too big, that while staff may have had recommendations initially to pursue all of the items in yellow, which came into that $218 million number, we heard loud and clear that the council felt that we should focus on the highest priority investments and to focus on a smaller number for this particular bond vote. And so that is what we did. We decided that the bulk of the work that we were going to be doing is on Maine Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is our largest treatment plant. The projects that were proposed for East and North, those are not going away. I want to be very clear, and I've tried to be very transparent with folks. There is nothing that was in the original plan that we're not going to have to do, but we're hoping and believing that with the possibility of a lower final cost for Stage 1 project, with the hope of grant funding, I very much hope that when we get to Stage 2, which could come as early as 2027, that number that we have listed right now could be smaller. And that's going to be a better conversation than us trying to go for all of the money right now. So there is strategy in this approach. But at the end of the day, what we are advancing is Stage 1. Let's see. Transparency is extremely important. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of calculations, and I want to make sure that you all and the community have access to them so that when we do come back, people have seen these numbers, and they're hopefully going to see that these numbers that we have up there are smaller because we've been able to pull down grant funding. But I'm a big believer in show your work, And if people want to go and look at the numbers and understand how we got to the number that we have now and how we are going to be coming back, all of that material is available on our website as well as in the city council memo that we gave to you for tonight. Importantly, I think I've also continued to reiterate that the cost estimates or the rate impact estimates that I have a different slide on later on, because we know that we're going to have to do East and North Plant, we have baked those costs and potential future bonding into the current rate estimate. So back to what I was saying, if we're able to get grant funding, if costs come down, that maximum 89% conservative estimate you would expect to also come down as that becomes more evident. So at the end of the day, with your help, we've been able to slice some dollars off of our original proposal, bringing the $218 million ask down to $152 million, and the drinking water down to $20 million. Some important updates that Chapin alluded to, and these are completely friendly to staff. There are multiple milestones that we go through when we go through preliminary engineering and final design, and it makes complete sense that with each of those steps, with a project of this size, we would be coming back to you and other bodies to make sure that you are completely kept up to speed. So we would be planning to come back, and this is all baked into the resolution, to provide you a formal update when we are finished with 90% preliminary engineering, which is anticipated to be in February, so I get to keep coming back for these late night meetings. 30% final design, 60% final design, and 90% final design. Importantly, we will be procuring a third-party entity to do a comprehensive peer review at the 60% final design stage to provide to you in that update, and that's well in advance of bidding of the project. So should a third party find something that somehow we've all missed, there should be ample time for us to make those adjustments before we go out to bid. And then also reflected in the resolution is our commitment to come back to you no later than August to report on the feasibility of using a construction manager at risk methodology for the construction phase. We're getting to know more about this delivery method, but my understanding is you hire a construction manager who then guarantees a maximum price at which they would deliver the project. So they are in charge of procuring and making sure that that project comes in within the guaranteed price. We've talked a lot about the fact that there is a large body of work still remaining and currently ongoing to reduce the impact on ratepayers, including pursuit of any and all grants. We are committed to exploring the WIFIA program. It's not been ever done in Vermont, but if we're not able to unlock additional loan financing from the state revolving fund low interest program, we certainly are going to be looking at that because those rates are lower than issuing revenue bonds. And we've been engaged ongoing with the state legislative delegation as well as the state treasurer's office to really make sure that they are aware of the importance of these investments and the importance of state funding, particularly for the piece around capacity expansion for housing, as well as environmental improvements, which are going to benefit all of Vermont. Another piece of the resolution is a commitment to continue to work with the council on expanding and enhancing our affordability programs. We have a good affordability program, but we recognize that it is not going to meet everybody's needs and that we need to look at potential expansions. This is a simplified version of the kind of crazy bar graph that we have presented in the past, really focusing on these next 5 years. So based on current forecasts, we do still estimate that the water resources bills could increase up to 89% over these next 5 years. This is not a one-time giant 89%, but a series of projected rate increases as we move through the years. And in summary, we look forward to your consideration of placing the $20 million water bond and $152 million lake bond on the ballot so that we can support a resilient Burlington with the capacity for growth, as well as a healthy Lake Champlain. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. As mentioned earlier in the Board of Finance, thank you very much for being with us early on with respect to this project, the many times you've been before the council, and as well as the many times that you've engaged with the public with respect to both of these bond requests. I will note that on both items 8.8 and 8.9, we had scheduled 20 minutes. We have a few minutes left on this item. Lori, when we hit the timer there, I'll ask that we reset it to 20 and then start again, or if you just want to put it in for 25 now, that makes sense to me. So thank you. So I will turn to councilors now for anyone who has questions or feedback. Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you've done to be responsive to thoughts we've shared at this city council table, as well as emails and your lengthy response to my email from your last presentation. I have two questions, one of which I'm hoping you can answer tonight, which is just a reiteration of what you explained and to be sure I understand what you're saying. The second question, I am not looking for an answer tonight because I want you to have an opportunity to think about it. So the first question is, in your response to me, I had a constituent who asked how the water quality standards changes are impacting what we're doing here and how they are adding to the costs. And your answer was that basically, if I'm understanding it correctly, and that's my question, the cost estimated attributable to a standard that only Burlington is being held to is $30 million. And yeah, so, and then you go on to say EPA and Vermont DEC issued this requirement. Mm-hmm. And just wanted to confirm that that is correct. And because President Travers may cut me off, I'm going to ask the second question that I don't want you to answer, which is, the mayor just stated that part of the reason we need to go forward with this is because we're expecting 5,000 units of growth, which we very much need. And I am wondering how much of, we still, even if we had no growth, we still have a lot of work to do. And I'd like to understand how the 5,000 new units and accommodating that scale impacts the cost of what we're doing, or if it doesn't. You can answer that later. Thanks.
What if I have the answer to both?
Well, we'll see if President Travers cuts you off.
I wouldn't dare.
Good clarification, and I might have misspoken in my email. Burlington is one of the only communities. There are I don't remember the total number of communities. We're not the only one that had to meet this enhanced phosphorus standard, but they set the trigger threshold for who had to go to 0.2 milligrams per liter at the size of your plant. And we happen to have 3 plants that are all big enough to meet that trigger. So I will have to get back to you as to what the other communities are. But safe to say, of all of the wastewater treatment plants across Vermont, not everybody has to do it, only the large ones. And then your other question, so the particular question was getting into, we have to actually spend about $30 million of this proposal is to install the tertiary treatment, which is required to meet the Lake Champlain TMDL. The Lake Champlain TMDL, total maximum daily load, they look at all the different sources of phosphorus, and then they restrict certain sources. And something like a wastewater treatment plant, while it costs a lot of money, is an easy source to restrict and then know that you got all of those pounds. There's tons and tons of pounds of phosphorus that are out there that the state has an approach for, but they're not constantly measuring and sampling and testing to know what those exact pounds are. So it is not, it is common for these types of plans to focus on things like wastewater treatment plants that have point source discharges with permits that they can easily regulate. And again, in Vermont, they decided not to make everybody do this, which I certainly provided that comment when the TMDL was passed, that, hey, if everybody did a bigger lift, then big communities wouldn't have to then take on this burden. But I did unfortunately lose that battle. But it's one of the reasons why we feel very comfortable in continuing to approach the state with the fact that this particular project deserves a significant funding, a grant, should those funds be available at the state level, and that's a whole other issue. To your other question, we have actually calculated that, and I can send you the breakdown. About 20% of our proposed project can be attributed to capacity need, to making sure that we have the flexibility to be able to accept up to 5,000 new units across the city. With I think it was in the memo, 4,200 or so within the main and east plant sewer shed. To be clear, some of that is building out main plant so that it has this additional capacity so that we can bring the flow from east plant. East plant has, the permit has existing remaining capacity, and so by merging the two systems, we're able to have more flexibility because a lot of the growth, when we looked at it, is gonna happen in the main plant sewer shed, and main plant is the only one of our plants that actually has the least remaining capacity.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Are there any other councilors that wish to get in the queue on this item? Councilor Newbeezer.
I just want to say thank you so much. I think from your presentations, I know you all came to Ward 1's MPA, and I know that was received really well and was really informative. Obviously, you've come before the council a few times now. And for me, you know, folks are concerned, and I had a few constituents reach out about sort of the large price tag, and I, again, can appreciate that. But it's also very clear to me that city staff are really laser focused on affordability and protecting ratepayers, focused on transparency and accountability, focused on collaboration, and those are things we really need to be doing. So I just want to acknowledge and appreciate that work. The other piece I really was glad to hear and glad to sort of get specifics on was the fact that you all are really pushing to pull every dollar we can out of Montpelier, and really making the case that they're expecting us to take on a huge burden, a huge portion of the burden, probably disproportionate compared to the rest of the state. And so we need the support. We're willing to do that, but we need the support from them as well. And it's just, to my mind, responsible long-term planning, maintaining a vital function of local government. Again, we can't spend money on everything, but we have to guarantee access to clean, reliable, and safe drinking water in the city of Burlington for years to come. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Travers. I want to thank you for your work and engagement on this. I know we've been talking a lot even in these late days, so I appreciate your being available and answering our questions. I will be supporting the request to put this bond on the ballot, but I still continue to have significant concerns about affordability, and I think I've shared these with both of you. And I continue to look at these water bond requests along with the GO bond requests we're going to be taking up shortly, and the FY26 budget discussions that we'll be having in earnest, I'm sure, in the upcoming meetings, is like parts of a whole. And so the need is obvious to me, having gone on the tours and listening to the arguments, that we need to make this multi-generational investment in our aging water systems. And I also want to thank you for continuing the work to phase this project so it lessens the impact on ratepayers in the near term and allows us the work on the FY26 budget and beyond to work on city operational affordability measures for taxpayers that will maybe offset some of the increases for the ratepayers. And lastly, I just want to say I appreciate the commitment to managing the costs during the final design process, and the inclusion of the value engineering and construction management at risk model for the wastewater project. So thank you for that as well. So I will be supporting it tonight, but like I said, I'm going to be looking to offset some of the negative affordability impacts here with sort of operational efficiencies on the budget side, I think. And that's all I have. I don't know if are you ready to have me make a motion, or you want more discussion?
Why don't we, because I would like to do sort of both motions back to back, so my suggestion would be to councilors that we use this opportunity to ask any questions or feedback that you have on either one of these items. And then when we're done with comments, Councilor Barlow, I will come back to you for back-to-back motions on each of these items.
Sounds good.
Great. Councilor Grant.
Thank you. I want to say that I enjoyed the tour. It was very, very interesting. I don't know, maybe enjoyed isn't quite the word. They were just a couple of smells that did get to me. But it was very fascinating and very enlightening. And we know, not only in our city, but across our country, there are severe, there are literally millions of people that are living without access to safe drinking water, failing septic systems, failing infrastructure, no running water. This is a real and present problem. We know we talk about it often, as we've talked about these bonds and other projects in the city. You know, the proverbial chickens are coming home to roost with regards to deferred maintenance. We literally cannot defer any longer. And when we take a look at how it's going to affect our bills, I just ask people to think about what would happen if you weren't able to turn on your water or flush your toilet, or it does turn on, but you can't cook with it, you can't shower or bathe in it. So we definitely don't want to FA and FO. We want to make sure that we are supporting this, especially to increase our capacity. Because if we can't increase our capacity, we can't build, which would then expand our property tax base and provide funds for other things. So it's all related and kind of rolls down the hill, making the snowball bigger. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Grant. Are there any other councilors that wish to speak on this? Either the water bond or the lake bond? All right. Seeing none, then I think we can go to a vote, or a motion at least. Councilor Barlow, so first I would go to you for a motion on item 8.8, the lake bond.
The lake bond. I'm reading the motions in the memo. Says the second motion in the memo is the lake bond memo. So I move to waive the reading and adopt the attached resolution authorizing placement of a bond request for an amount not to exceed $152 million for capital improvements and additions to the wastewater and stormwater systems on the ballot of the annual city meeting to be held March 4th, 2025, as more specifically set forth in the attached resolution.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow, seconded by Councilor Bergman. Just to clarify for the record, Councilor Barlow, there are two versions of the resolution that are posted. There's one that in capital letters at the end says updated with respect to the 1/27/2025 lake bond resolution. Is that the one you're referring to?
That's the one I'm referring to.
Okay. And Councilor Bergman, that's the one you understood you were seconding? All right. I did not have any other councilors wishing to speak on this, but we'll give folks one final opportunity. Okay, we will then go to a vote on the measure. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Councilor Barlow, could I turn to you for a motion on the water bond now, item 8.9?
Sure. I move to waive the reading and adopt the attached resolution authorizing the placement of a bond request for an amount not to exceed $20 million for capital improvements and additions to the waterworks system on the ballot of the annual city meeting to be held March 4th, 2025, as more specifically set forth in the attached resolution.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow, seconded by Councilor Bergman. Any further discussion on this item, 8.9? We will go to a vote then. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Director Spencer, Director Moyer, for your work here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Great.
We'll continue the conversation leading to town meeting day. Thank you.
Great. That now takes us to item 8.10. This is the March 4th, 2025 annual city meeting, pledging the credit of the city to issue general obligation bonds for city's 5-year capital plan. I do believe we have Ashley Parker online. Mayor, did you want to tee this one up as well, or should we go to Ashley here? You did? Oh, you teed them? Okay, so all of them were teed up. They're all teed up, so they're teed up for you, Ashley, if you have anything to say here before we turn it to councilors.
No, I'm happy to go through the presentation if you would like me to, or we could just go to councilors.
Why don't we, I think we've received the presentation before. Are there any updates in the presentation, Ashley, from what was previously presented to the council on this item?
I think we have a couple of extra tables in here that I'm happy to just go through really quickly, but nothing substantial is different from my original presentation to the council.
All right, well, why don't you just go over those couple tables, and then I don't think you need to go through the whole presentation, and then we'll turn to councilors for any questions or comments they have.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all again for letting me come before you tonight to talk through this. I wanted to point your attention to just a couple of tables. So on this slide, you will see on the green table, we have broken out if we only were allowed, or if we were only able to utilize our $2 million annual borrowing, which is really the only confirmed budget that the city's general fund capital program has access to. These are the things in the green table that we'd be able to do. We wouldn't be able to do all of them. Each of these assets is broken out by what we could do with $2 million per asset. So we are really working to hit this $8 to $10 million a year revenue goal, which you'll see the spread out of the spend out across the next 3 fiscal years if this $20 million general obligation bond is able to make it through. Here is our overall capital need. Obviously, we're focusing on critical assets. All of these assets are showing more than $2 million in need, with the exception of maybe the transportation safety. But all of them are really more than what we currently could do with our $2 million annual borrowing. One of the things that I have added to this presentation since we last spoke is this table that shows the potential allocations if we do receive a $20 million general obligation bond, how we could spend this money. None of this is guaranteed for any of the assets or projects noted in the capital plan, but it is showing you how we could allocate this money. And I think these are all the same. Our tax impact, we're projecting to be the same as when we last spoke. Obviously, we know we need a 2/3 vote, community vote to support this measure. But those are really the big items that I wanted to make sure you all had an opportunity to see before moving forward. So happy to go through any of the other slides and take questions.
Great. And just as with the folks from DPW on the water and lake bonds, thanks to you as well, Ashley, for being before the council multiple times on this item, as well as your engagement with the public, including through our neighborhood planning assemblies. So, do any councilors wish to be recognized on this item, the general obligation bond proposal? Councilor Barlow.
Thank you. Again, I will be supporting the request to put this on the ballot. The capital needs of the city are obvious to me, and I thought the memo accompanying this item, as well as the presentations that Ashley's made, have done a good job of laying out the need. Longer term, I am in favor of figuring out how to increase the annual capital bonding authority that the city has. from the current $2 million level to a higher number to reflect the actual annual needs for capital replacement and for inflation. The goal in my mind would be to get to a level where we wouldn't have to be asking for bonding for these sort of cyclical replacement needs, and that we'd have enough in the annual bonding authority. But I wouldn't want to make that change until we were, again, getting back to how this is part of a three-legged stool, the water bonds, this GO bond, and the FY26 budget. We get to a place where we're thinking about the overall affordability concerns and figuring out a way how to offset the increased debt service expense for any increased general obligation bonding with other city priorities through optimization of affordability for taxpayers. But I will be supporting this again tonight, and looking forward to the discussions that we'll subsequently have about the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Any other councilor wish to be recognized on this item? Councilor Bergman.
Just briefly, I think, and I would ask the administration, probably not Ashley or DPW, to perhaps on the expected tax increases where talking about them on a monthly basis, to have them in quarterly and annual figures out there, since that's what people think about. They think about their tax bill, get 4 of them, right? You get an annual thing, so that would be very helpful so people can actually see this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. I do not have any other councilors in the queue. Seeing none, we will go to a motion on this item. Councilor Barlow, could I turn to you for a motion on item 8.10?
Yes. I move to adopt the attached resolution for authorizing the proposed question related to the $20 million general obligation bond for general fund capital infrastructure to be placed on the ballot for town meeting day to be held on March 4th, 2025.
Motion made by Councilor Barlow, seconded by Councilor Bergman. One last time, do any councilors wish to be recognized on this item? We will go to a vote then. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Thank you very much.
We are now at the final item on our deliberative agenda, item 8.11, resolution establishing a violation reporting incentivization pilot, or VRIP. The main sponsor of this resolution is Councilor Litwin. Councilor Litwin, I will turn to you for a motion, and if you would like the floor back upon a second, happy to give it to you.
Thank you. I am happy to make a motion to waive the reading and ask for the floor back.
To confirm, are you asking to just waive the reading?
Waive the reading and adopt the resolution.
Okay.
Ask for the floor back. Thank you. Sorry, getting sleepy.
No, thank you, Councilor Litwin. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilor Barlow. Councilor Litwin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I don't have prepared remarks, but I do want to offer sort of where this came out of. So, as we all know, on December 9th, we had a conversation about the graffiti ordinance, and it was a complex conversation, and there was disagreement amongst my colleagues at this table and with the administration around particularly one aspect, which was the private right of action, which would have enabled neighbors to sue neighbors over alleged violations of really any of our ordinance, and we heard public testimony that could range even to the use of leaf blowers. And I don't think that was the intention that any of us wanted. We also heard testimony and received written testimony from the highly respected Cornell Legal Clinic, as well as the ACLU, and
I would ask for order, please, from other councilors.
And so I agreed with the legal assessment in the effort to stave off unnecessary, costly litigation with the city. And so I have brought forth this resolution in an effort which I worked on over the holidays with a great deal of research to try and bring something forth that was constitutionally defensible, that enabled members of the public to help us crowdsource violations of specific ordinances as part of a pilot program, and to reward residents or even guests of the city for helping us successfully ticket offenders for those specific resolutions, which range from graffiti to certain parking violations, such as somebody parked in a handicapped parking spot without a placard, and also illegal dumping, all of which are issues in our city. And I have cited quite a few examples. The public is welcome to look into them from cities around the country who have used incentivization models, which we use in the field of public health quite regularly, to engage and excite and empower the public to be part of the solution. Most notably, I would point to the work in New York City to engage the residents of New York City in enforcing anti-idling reduction laws, where they received 25% of every $375 ticket that they were able to ticket the trucking companies. So residents were getting thousands of dollars and were motivated by many different reasons. Some were environmental activists, and others were just worried about the health of their community. So while I don't think this is necessarily a silver bullet to all of our problems, I do offer this resolution in the spirit to move us toward a fair and equitable assessment of those who violate our ordinances, including the destruction or damaging of public property. And I hope that our ordinance committee, which this would be referred to, will be able to help us get this up and running as a controlled pilot. And I lastly would encourage the ordinance committee, should this be adopted, to make sure that we're very clear on the definition of graffiti and what that means before we enact this pilot, should it be passed. So thank you, and I'm happy to give time to other councilors.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Are there any other councilors that wish to speak on this item? Councilor Bergman.
None of what I'm going to say will surprise the main sponsor, but I am not in favor of this resolution. The problem is the lack of enforcement resources, not reporting and documentation. This is going to do nothing to deal with that problem. And if it's successful, it's going to exacerbate it by encouraging complaints when we do not have the capacity to deal with them. I don't believe that the failure to act on complaints encouraged by an incentive program will increase public confidence in our community health and safety system. Now, despite this being styled as a pilot program and asking the ordinance committee to develop an ordinance, it seems to me that it circumvents the process to analyze how to better deal with quality of life violations. I would also note that the cost of enforcement is rarely covered by fines assessed. So as part of a better process, I think the financial impact on the city's financial situation should be assessed prior to the creation of any pilot program or permanent system. I think it would have been better to send this idea to the administration and its departments and our council committees of jurisdiction to study it. I am not intrinsically opposed to incentivizing people complaining. And I was an enforcement official here for a long time. I believe in enforcing those, but this doesn't get to it. Finally, it is clear to me that the time of March 24th is way too short, given the things we have to do to address in the ordinance committee. And this is less important than my other problems with it, but the rush schedule is still a significant drawback. given these concerns, I just can't vote for this.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Does any other councilor wish to be recognized on this item? Councilor Shannon and then Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you. I think that everything we try to get at has a problem with enforcement and our inability to provide the enforcement of existing ordinances, new things that we want to do. And I was happy to see that Councilor Litwin had done some research to find things that were working in other communities. I actually share a lot of Councilor Bergman's concerns. I don't know how it will work here, and I'm not sure how this will play out, but there are examples of other communities where it is working. Probably my biggest area of agreement with Councilor Bergman is on the timeline in the ordinance committee that I have also shared with Councilor Litwin that this is going to be very difficult for us. And we don't have a starting point of kind of starting from a base ordinance, of looking at what's working in other communities and coming forward with an ordinance that the ordinance committee can review. I think that to be successful here, we're really going to need the city attorney's office to look at some of these, kind of to what you were saying. I can't speak to Councilor Bergman, but to what Councilor Bergman was saying, we do need help from the administration with this. And I think it would be helpful if we had the city attorney look at this and see if there is a proposal or kind of bringing a framework to the ordinance committee for discussion based on the examples that are given in other communities. So I cannot promise that the ordinance committee is going to have something full-fledged or even half-fledged by March 24th. But if the city attorney's office is able to help us out in reviewing this and maybe bringing forward a working draft, I think that that would be helpful to our process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Carpenter?
Thanks. I'm just going to sort of concur with some of that and just remind us that at the time we reviewed the ordinance and set aside the private right of action, we did invite the administration and the city attorney to come forward with other ideas. And so that invitation still hangs out there, and I think we should be looking at other ideas. Maybe there's a role for a private right of action that's much more narrow. I don't know, but I just think that was the invitation at the time, and I hope over the next number of months we can look at other ideas.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Does any other councilor wish to speak on this item? Councilor Grant and then Councilor Newbeazer, and then Councilor McKnight and then Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. I just don't think that it's an appropriate time for something like this. We have some really extraordinary problems with issues of enforcement. And I think that also without researching how this is working, having grown up in New York City and following New York City news, I'm familiar with this ordinance in New York, and there are some issues around it. It has been successful in some ways, in other ways it hasn't. I believe that we do have to make sure that if we're bringing these ideas forward, that we really do due diligence to make sure there is back and forth communication with the administration and with any department or team that would be responsible in helping to make this successful. We have ordinances right now that we cannot, for a variety of reasons, enforce. And then, you know, this would require the have the tickets. I just think there's such a backlog of other types of things around reporting, various things that this would be better served if there was more time to look into it, to have a better understanding of what it would take for it to be successful. Like, I'm not sure it would be something that would be successful right now. And I do believe that's something that we need to think about. We want something to be effective and not another shiny object. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Newbeezer?
Thank you, Council President. I am opposed to this resolution for the following reasons. Which the lead author of the resolution referred to this discussion we had around private right of action. And the concern in the discussion at that time when we were discussing it was that citizens being able to defend themselves against hate speech by proving in court some validity to the need was going to open us up for neighbors breeding distrust with one another, was going to open us up to abuses of free speech, things I take seriously, but the opportunity for the intent to be missed was much narrower in that case than in my view compared to this one, where the proposal in front of us is essentially saying we're going to deputize citizens to hand out fines to their neighbors. If we're talking about concerns around
Point of inquiry.
distrust,
I'm sorry, Councilor Newbeezer.
I would just like to inquire of the speaker, which I believe I'm allowed to do under a point of inquiry.
Well, it's up to Councilor Newbeezer as to whether or not he wants to yield the floor. Councilor Newbeezer, will you yield the floor to Councilor Litwin?
I will yield.
Thank you. I just want to clarify for Councilor Newbeezer that there is nothing in this that deputizes anyone. It is a reporting mechanism so that people can gather evidence and report it using the mechanism that we passed on December 9th.
Okay. I apologize, Councilor Litwin. That was out of order.
Okay,
A point of inquiry would require a question of the
Are you
individual who
aware?
has the floor. Excuse me. You're out of order, Councilor Litwin. So we will return to Councilor Newbeezer. Councilor Newbeezer, please continue.
I am aware. I did read the resolution, and it's my interpretation of the effect on the community. But as I was saying, we're essentially, and to the clarifying point, going to deputize neighbors to gather information on each other and then pay them for doing so. I understand that this happens in other communities. I know New York, for example, was referenced, and I'm actually familiar with the program in New York just because I'm a local government nerd and have seen how that is playing out. We had someone in public comment who, I feel for and seems like had a horrible experience with his kid, but basically said, was making an argument for vigilantism and blatantly said, I don't have the training, but that doesn't matter. I'm just going to take action, which is incredibly dangerous, does not make our community safer, is more dangerous for everybody involved. And so my concern around this is we're setting up more and more opportunities for conflict, and that's going to worsen our efforts collectively to address community safety and to de-escalate situations between neighbors. For example, the Community Justice Center has a program where they help reach out and really try to mitigate neighborly disputes in a productive way when there's been a breakdown in communication. So those were my main points. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. The final piece here was just to my colleague, Councilor Bergman's point. The other concern of this is, that I hold around this, is that I don't think it's a lack of reporting. When I talk to constituents around frustrations with code enforcement and enforcement of ordinances, the reporting's there. I mean, we have an incredibly engaged citizenry in Burlington. We all do. I mean, I get emails all the time. We all get emails all the time from folks saying, hey, I'm having this issue here. There's trash in this area. We need cleaned up. Most of the job of a city councilor, honestly, in many cases, is chasing down sort of the city bureaucracy to make sure that folks' questions are answered, make sure that issues that are happening are addressed in a timely manner, because city staff have so much to do and so little resources in often cases to do it. So for me, the sort of pain point that we need to figure out solving is getting more enforcement for resources. And we're starting to do that. We've, since this administration took office, hired up in the city attorney's office, giving us capacity there. I know there's more efforts around code enforcement, but I guess my point is the enforcement piece is the problem, not the reporting, because I think everybody around town knows, just anecdotally, like when I go and talk to constituents, myself and my other, my neighbors can list off sort of the problem properties, or like the particular landlord here and there who's worse than another, in terms of really being mindful of their impact on tenants and impact on neighbors in a given neighborhood. So with that, I will pass it back to you, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeazer. We are at time overall on this item. I do still have Councilor McKnight and Councilor Broderick in the queue. So Councilor McKnight and Broderick, I think we'll allow you an opportunity to, do you want to speak to this, Councilor Kane? Okay. Well, we're also coming up on 10:30, so there's only 9 minutes. So we have Councilor McKnight, Broderick, Kane in the queue, and we'll ask that we wrap it up in this time frame.
Thank you, President Travers. So I am really excited to be supporting what I see as a much more practical and accessible tool to do the very important work of empowering our community members to deal with hateful and harmful graffiti and vandalism. We've talked a little bit about the private right of action. Just to give my perspective on that, it was not only overly broad and constitutionally questionable, but it was also really impractical. To say it really simply, it is very difficult to sue someone. It is time-consuming. It often takes years to resolve. It's costly. And in reality, it's an option that's often, unfortunately, only available to the wealthiest among us because of all those things. Earlier tonight, we were asked on a separate resolution to look to other cities and to use data in order to find solutions. And that is exactly what this resolution does. And I really want to give Councilor Litwin some props here, because he went out, he did his homework, and he brought something new to the table. And he also shared it ahead with both the administration and all the councilors here with weeks, if not over a month of time for input, which is much appreciated. So personally, I'm really glad that we have a resolution here that offers a new path on this important work to combat hateful and damaging violations to our ordinances, which are really plaguing our city in a lot of ways right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Litwin. I do think that this is, I appreciate the research that you did put into this. And there are parts in here that I do like, such as exploring the feasibility of a restorative process for people who commit crimes like dumping and graffiti, and how we can involve them in the cleanup process. I do appreciate things like that. But I'm coming from, in my reason for not supporting incentivizing neighbors to report each other, go along some of the arguments that Councilor Newbeazer and Councilor Bergman made, and it just doesn't align with my personal values that we should be introducing financial reward into public service. And in this context, I believe that if that, like Councilor Newbeeser said, when our neighbors do see these violations and they do take note of them and they do contact folks like us to ensure that the wheels of bureaucracy are properly turning. So I don't think a financial reward will expedite that. I think that it just reveals the problem that enforcement is not happening to the extent that it needs to happen, and that's what I think we should focus on. And I also, obviously, with the resolution that was passed, I do agree that we still do need a database like that for people to make those reports. I just don't agree that we should be financially incentivizing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Councilor Kane.
Thanks. I agree that we should not be financially incentivizing folks to try to divert enforcement.
Point of inquiry? Sorry.
Councilor Kane, it's your choice. Would you like to yield the floor to Councilor McKnight?
No.
Okay, the floor is yours, Councilor Kane.
Okay, so I receive complaints from a number of constituents. I represent downtown. Constituents file documentation under often the same incident numbers over and over and get no response. As is, we have very limited enforcement capabilities. And so there are already a lot of very frustrated people who, you know, if we were to pass something like this, would be then competing with, you know, just a floodgates being opened where, you know, I could record anybody littering and then have a financial incentive to pursue that being looked into. And so people who are already having a really hard time getting enforcement resources are going to have an even harder time. And so, you know, I think this idea is, you know, certainly inappropriate for the time being, but I do appreciate the research and believe it was brought forward in good faith and appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Kane. I do not have any other councilors in the queue, and we are approaching 10:30 now. So I believe we will call a vote on Councilor Litwin's motion. Again, because I believe we'll have a divided vote, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Councilor Barlow?
Yes.
Councilor Bergman?
No.
Councilor Broderick?
No.
Councilor Carpenter?
Yes.
Councilor Grant?
No.
Councilor Kane?
No.
Councilor Litwin?
Yes.
Councilor McKnight?
Yes.
Councilor Newbeeser?
No.
Councilor Shannon? Yes. City Council President Travers?
Yes.
6 ayes, 5 nays.
6 yeses and 5 noes. The motion carries, and thank you, Councilor Litwin. We have 3 minutes before 10:30. The next item on our agenda is committee reports. I know a number of councilors sort of gave committee reports in City Council General Affairs, but is there any councilor that wishes to give another committee report? Councilor Barlow and then Councilor Shannon.
The Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee will be meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m. at 645 Pine Street. On our agenda, as Councilor Broderick indicated earlier, we have the GMT FY26 assessment and special assessment, as well as the Battery Street scoping study preferred alternative presentation, and a presentation on parking services license plate readers. So, be captivating content. Please attend.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. The Ordinance Committee will be meeting tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. in the Busher Conference Room, and we will be discussing the vacant building ordinance, which we've already started discussing, but be discussing that further, as well as recommendations from the Dog Task Force on changes to our ordinance, mostly related to dogs. We did have our meeting on cats, And we will be discussing next steps with CATS and how the committee wants to proceed, but we won't be making definitive decisions on that, I don't expect tomorrow, but rather the other elements that have been recommended. Thank you.
Point of information, I'm just looking at the city's calendar, and I am not seeing tomorrow's meeting. It's in my own personal calendar, but I'm not seeing it as part of it. I might just be...
It is on Civic Clerk, and if it is not on the city calendar, I also found something else today not on the city calendar, so this being the second thing today, it is there?
Okay.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Are there any other councilors with a committee update? Councilor Newbeezer.
I've talked a little bit, or I've mentioned in past committee reports that we've been discussing this resolution that started in CDNR around clarifying the relationship between MPAs and city government. That working group has come to a final draft, a working group made up of folks from the city attorney's office, from CEDO, and from All Wards MPA, and myself as a rep from CDNR. And so the next steps for that will be, one, to bring it back to my colleagues on CDNR for further feedback and review. We're also going to be, before we refer it back to this council, myself and a member of the All Wards MPA, one of the folks who served on the sort of informal working group developing it, are going to be going around to everybody's MPA, so I'll get to come say hello to everybody, to talk a little bit about what the resolution is, what the intent is, what the sort of purpose and sort of where it came from, because it was really a resolution that came out of the MPAs. And so we're excited to do that, so I wanted to give folks a heads up. And that will probably start, the sort of city tour will probably start closer to end of February and following town meeting day elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. We are 1 minute after 10:30, but is there any other councilor with a committee update? Okay. The only update I would just have for folks is that I was in touch with Sarah Montgomery in the clerk's office with respect to our statutory obligation to hold a public hearing, not on the charter change items, we already had the 2 public hearings on that, but a public hearing on the bond measures that we warned for the town meeting day ballot tonight. I have, in communication with the mayor's office, scheduled this to take place on Wednesday, February 12th at 5:30 p.m. Because we will not be taking any action, is not a meeting that will require a quorum of the city council, but would ask that councilors, if they wish to attend that meeting, mark their calendars for the public hearing, which again will be put on these bond measures on February 12th at 5:30 p.m. With
As a point of information, there'll be a remote option.
Yes, there will be. Thank you very much, Councilor Bergman. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilor Litwin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous, and we are adjourned at 10:32 p.m. Thank you.